Well, maybe you should care.
I'll edit shit out.
I mean,
I'm in control.
let's not forget that, like, both you and I are going to be, like, super famous one day. We're going to make Joe Rogan look like a jolly ponce. And people are going to be trawling through all of this, all the hot mic moments, all of the, oops, we pressed record too early moments. Everything, every little thing, they're going to be micro-analysing it.
Yeah. Is everything working?
I think so. Are we? Is it auto? Yeah, it's auto editing.
Yeah.
Audio levels look good. Actually, hang on. You unplug my microphone all the time, don't you?
No, it's working.
1, 2. It is. It must be because
good?
it's editing to me. Yep. All right.
Stop everything.
Oh, stop everything.
Wait.
Carly, how could you? You haven't done the number.
I must find. What are we? 7.
7.
I must.
Episode 27.
That's outrageous.
All right. How do we make it go to the wide shot? There we go. Episode 26. Episode 26 is becoming. Oops, where is it? There it is. Episode 27. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, crisis averted. Oh, Carly, you are a hot mess. Just,
It's because I've only had one coffee.
Can't even have your studio ready for me when I get down here. Oh, dear, oh dear.
Bloody whinge.
Yeah. We're going to talk a lot about whinges today. I've had some whinges in my inbox. Gosh.
So have I, actually.
Yeah?
A lot. It's actually...
It's going to be the whingy episode.
I was just writing back to one of your trolls on YouTube when you rang the doorbell. I was like...
I'm sorry to interrupt your flow.
Have they responded? Because
No.
you know when you're in the fight, you're like, back, I
Look,
dare you.
I get a lot of messages every day and lots of them are just rubbish and nonsense, but someone really activated my almonds this morning.
Activated your almonds.
I got stuck back in. I'm like, nah, sorry, you don't talk to me like that.
Aww.
Anyway, I've moved on now, but I'm going to share it all with you because I think it's funny.
I hate it when, like, you write a really good reply. Like, I don't get in the fight too much, but there's a couple of things that will get me going.
Yeah.
And one is insulting my profession. And I was like, you know what? You are going to cop the wrath.
You're not triggered, are you? You've been triggered today.
Not triggered.
No?
Actually, this all stems from, you know how I talked about my project Chicken in the Noodle Aisle?
Yes.
This is just, it's an attitude problem that I just want to smack the out of Australians. It's an attitude problem.
I think we would all benefit from a lot of people having some attitude adjustments. Yes.
So
the 5-fingered right hand of attitude adjustment.
It's just this perpetual mindset. I mean, we talk about wokeism, right? Being victim mentality.
Yeah.
But this is more than that. This is like, that's just ridiculous. And that always works. I'm like, what's this always never mindset?
I know this is going to be the whinging episode. We've already established that, but I believe we're meant to start with good news. I think we're supposed to start happy and suck people in.
Shut up.
We're supposed to suck people in gently and then hit them with all the negativity and the suckiness of how terrible human beings are.
People actually love negativity.
Yeah, I know.
Are we not using headphones? Really bad.
Well, I mean, unless you've got video to play, because I can hear you just fine.
I know, but I'm just worried about the audio.
Are you like you just need that professional look?
Yeah, because people yell at us if the audio isn't right. So.
Well, I can. Whoa! I'm loud.
And actually, it sounds better in my brain.
You need to get onto your mic.
See, this is what benefits us.
Okay, all right, fine. I'm convinced. Yes, you're right.
Because if I have one more of your freaking followers tell me off about your audio...
Do it. Do it. All of you do it. You know you want to.
Also, it hides any faux pas with my hair, so...
Well, it helps to hide my greys, so I should probably make the most of it.
Do you care about grey hair?
I could not care less.
Yeah, me either.
See, but I have the advantage of being a guy.
Yeah.
And in my family, we don't tend to lose our hair as we get on. We just go grey. And, I mean, this is a well-established fact. Men age like fine wine. Women, unfortunately, more like fine milk. And that's just one of those biological differences that neither of us can fix.
I love how you say that to the person literally studying beauty standards. I have things I could say about that. It's true, though, because I had someone say to me the other day, I can't go out this weekend. I really have to get my hair done. It's just out of control. Because they're going grey, but they're going grey so much so that when their hair grows out, you can see
the roots, yeah.
And I literally had to stop him. I was like, mate, come on. Do you really think anyone gives a fuck?
And this is one of those, once you start, you can't stop. Because once your natural hair colour deviates significantly from what you're pretending is your natural hair colour. I mean, it's one thing if you've obviously got some coloured hair that's different. But if you're trying to pretend this is my natural hair, well, once you start, how do you stop? Because those roots are going to be obvious.
Well, not only that, like, I totally get it. And actually, interestingly, we're on a tangent already.
Tangent time. I
have to live timestamp this so I can put the graphics on.
You're going to put like the... Yeah. Excellent.
So Beck Judd has just come out with her own podcast called Vainish.
Okay.
And it's very heavily produced. Like, good on Beck for doing it. But I think the problem is when people like that get offered a podcast, it's very structured and it's done in a way that
Vainish, heavily produced. Well, it's kind of on brand.
No. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like milk toast.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to hear them just like actually riff.
Yeah.
You know, but it feels very structured.
Go
it's
for
only
it. Have a Barney.
It's 40-minute episodes and it's very clear, like, we've got to talk about this and then this and whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, Beck's presenter, whatever. But it's interesting because they're talking about all the procedures that they've done and they're having celebrities come on and talk about
And they can talk
procedures.
about all that in only 40 minutes. That's amazing.
That's what I mean about milk toast. I don't feel like they're actually like getting into it. I'm like, go on, girls, go. And it's interesting because Beck and I chat quite a bit in the DMs, and I've asked her.
Don't mean to name drop. It's just going to name drop a bit
She's
of Beck Judd DMing.
She is a brilliant woman. I know everyone loves to hate on Beck Judd, but she's fucking smart.
Yeah.
Her husband is one of the best footballers of all time. I don't even go for the West Coast. Don't come at me, but he is.
Yeah.
And I just love successful people.
Sure.
It just makes me fucking pumped.
And they're also much more interesting usually than mediocre people.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, how did we get onto this tangent? Here we are.
Well, we're deep in a tangent. We can't bail out now.
No, but like the one thing I've learned about working with people who are celebrities or established public figures, they are managed. Obviously, they need to be managed. They've got advertisers. And I think, unfortunately, it will happen to you and I at some point. There will be a level of, hey, we just need to be careful of this. Hey, we need to think about that.
So what you're telling me is to enjoy this phase while we're in it.
Yeah. Like, you think about it, right? Even if it's someone who's left-leaning or right-leaning, if they go too far on one thing, that could be catastrophic to their business.
Sure.
Get dropped by sponsors. I mean, we see this all the time. So I understand it. But I think in a world where everything feels so inauthentic and everything feels staged.
In a world where everything feels so inauthentic. Is that?
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah.
We could totally do a TV show about this. I think there is a real craving there for just literal conversations, not thought out, no strategy, just ad hoc, just riff.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what we do here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have no idea how we got there, but I believe we were meant to be going to your good news.
I was meant to make no, we went on 10 tangents. My point about bringing her up is that her discussion around beauty things, and I was like, I think there's so many frames of mind, but a lot of it is actually just in our heads.
100%. One of the things that I've noticed universally is people who appear to be comfortable in their own skin are always attractive. And this has been really interesting for me when it comes to clothing because I am very bland with my clothing. And I'm kind of jealous of people that are really bold with their clothing because there's definitely a part of me that looks at that and goes, I wish I felt like I could do that. But I'm sure you would have noticed there's a world of difference between that person who dresses really loud and outrageous because it's a genuine expression of what they like about themselves versus the person who dresses loud and outrageous because of their insecurity. And you can spot them, like you can smell it a mile away.
It's so interesting you bring this up. This is literally in my thesis.
Right.
But talking about expression and self-expression, I think when people, and I see this a lot with the woke side, and I know I keep calling woke. I say woke just purely to categorize people. It's a little bit easier.
Do we need a woke jar instead of a swear jar?
Yeah.
Like you've got to put $1 in every time you use the word?
It's just easy
that's how I'll make money on the show.
It's just easy for me to differentiate different groups of people. And I'm not saying it, as like a slur. Sometimes I say it as a slur, but for the most part, I'm just trying to categorize people. But there's this discussion at the moment talking about why these people all look a certain way. It's this uglification, right? And interestingly, Sydney Watson did a really brilliant video about this. If you guys don't look at Sydney Watson, like when she does her deep dives, she's brilliant.
Yeah.
She only posted it maybe a couple of days ago. It's about beauty. Beauty's making a comeback. And this is literally a segment. I've rolled into our first segment without even trying, and we haven't done good news.
Well, no, but okay, fine, you're in charge.
No. Well, I'll leave you guys hanging so that you want to watch the rest of the podcast. Okay. But just talking about why people
hanging like a Jeffrey Epstein.
Ouch, that's dark.
That's what goes through my head.
Yeah, that's there. That is in this segment. You just totally derailed everything.
Sydney Watson deep dive on beauty and the comeback of beauty. And this is our first segment, and you were going to quickly put a bullet point on the end of it or a full stop on the end of it so we could go and do good news.
My brain has totally reset.
I have just untangented the show. Untangent time.
Well, no, it was like, what the hell was I talking about? My brain has literally just gone, uglification of
Right,
people.
okay, yes.
And why
You're talking about me, that's right, I remember now.
why
Yep.
disenfranchised people or vulnerable people or insecure people lean into that.
Yeah.
Much like goth,
Yep.
much like emo. And
That's a different aesthetic. That is its own aesthetic.
it is,
But yes.
But I think it literally, like, people dip their toes into different things. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't emo, but just before emo was like pop punk. I was that, Avril Lavigne.
Yeah.
You know, I had the full Avril Lavigne aesthetic. And you try
Come on,
things
when she
on.
wore that tartan skirt on the front cover of whatever album that was, that was a moment. That was.
I wore the tie with the white beater and the
yeah.
skater jeans,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
unapologetically, and studded everything. G said if he hadn't met me like that, he would have fallen straight in love with me.
There you go.
Love that. So there you go. But yeah, so this uglification, but that's literally a segment, so we will just avoid that. So my good news.
Yes. What is
Right.
your good news?
I have good news.
Okay.
I got to reach it. This
What?
is my good news. Everybody,
Ooh.
this is my book.
I've only seen that in digital form up until now.
So this is, I need to put the camera on me. Excuse me. It's all about me here. This is
Excuse me. Look at my.
Mine.
My.
Mine. Do you remember the seagulls from
Yes.
Nemo?
So you were talking about uglification. I just want to show you that this is for your eyes only.
Are you ever going to let me, can I show this?
No. This is for your eyes only.
You look like Martin Bryant.
Normally I would respond by saying shots fired, but that's probably not appropriate in this particular case.
Wow.
Yeah. So for those that are wondering what's going on, listening to the podcast, and in fact the people watching the podcast also can't see, and they never will see. This is a photograph that was sent to me recently. I'd forgotten that this photograph existed.
Wow.
There are very few photographs of me when I had hair down to my shoulders, and there's a good reason for that. I found and hunted down and murdered the people that took the photos and destroyed them.
Is like a Nirvana t-shirt.
That would have completed the look. But
Hang on. Stop. I need to show you guys. Can we show them?
No.
Okay. But you're actually rocking the Gen Z look. You've got the dad sneakers with the jeans.
Yep.
Like that's
Yep.
actually really in right now.
Now, so now you know that I'm not lying when I say I had hair down to my shoulders. You can see
did.
that. And
You literally did.
when I used to like dress up for a wedding or something like that, and I would put product in my hair and do it all properly, I had full-on ringlets, and I would have girls come up to me, not for the purpose of giving me their phone number, but because they wanted to know what I did with my hair. That was the number one conversation that I had with girls when I was in my late teenage years.
What era would you say this is?
I was either still on my, no, I would have still been on my P's at that point.
So is this like 2000?
So call it 2002, 2000,
Okay.
yeah, 2001.
It just looks like that era. Isn't
Yep.
it funny? Like I'm looking at old mate beside you with that hair.
Oh, yeah.
That's very 2000s.
Yeah.
The only thing he's missing is like that ball chain necklace.
Yeah, so I was on a ski trip with a family. I had the hots for one of the girls there, and she had absolutely no interest in me whatsoever.
Yeah, it was probably the hair.
You don't blame her. So anyway, we were talking about uglification. I thought that was an appropriate.
Yeah, that's made my day. Anyway, back to my good news and my book. So this is. I just realised that whole thing was on me because I changed it to me. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
just me.
You.
So this is my book on lighting, and essentially in this is a whole bunch of what we call lighting recipes and talking about photography. So
Yep.
you guys can now go and buy a hard copy. Very exciting.
And where would they find that, Carly?
They'll find it on my website at carlsjsoda.com.
You are such a grifter.
I am, but I knew that you would be competitive with me, and you're going to be like, "Oh, you've got 2 books. I've got 2 books." Actually,
Well, hang on. Mine are thicker and have a lot more words. Yours are picture books. You've written children's picture books. You cannot compare those to the serious 50 to 60,000 word actual proper books that I've written.
I will upgrade you 1 master's thesis.
It's not finished yet.
Yeah, but it will be.
Yeah,
And
but it's
then
not.
it is the most.
I'll upgrade you another book that I've thought of
Pompous.
in my head. It's not finished yet either.
It's the most pompous, like elaborate.
Your capacity to write wank is unparalleled.
It's unmatched.
It is genuinely impressive.
It's funny because I'm not a great orator. As
Yeah.
in, this is a learned skill.
You're saying
I've
you're not a
learned.
great wanker in real life. It's just only when you're writing it.
No, it's when I don't know if you're like this when you write. When I just have that, like I normally listen to music and I just get really immersed in it. Not music with lyrics, just
yeah,
music.
yeah. Atmosphere.
And atmosphere. I love I never say his name right. Innuendo Ludovici. The Italian
I'm pretty
composer.
sure you just swore in 6 languages.
100%.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's an Italian composer. You guys probably know who I'm talking about. And I listen to him, and when I just go, like, it just flows out of me. But I don't seem to have that same ability when I'm speaking because I have to pause and think.
Yeah.
And the other thing I've realized too, which brings me into another part of our segment, is that I think modernity has actually really corrupted our ability to be creative, because when I want to be creative, I need to be in a flow. It's literally like I've got some nice lighting, I'm just alone, the music's going, and it just pours out of me.
Yeah.
If I'm interrupted, there's something happening. Like I never have a chance to get that deep flow.
This is something I wish that non-creatives understood so much more. When you interrupt me, you didn't take 30 seconds of my time. You deconstructed the last 90 minutes of work that I had built in my head that I had not yet committed to the page because it wasn't ready for that. This is when I was writing both of my books, I had to find ways to lock myself away from everybody and leave my phone behind so that nothing could actually impose. Because it's not about the amount of time that imposition takes. It's about that flow. It's about that uninterrupted getting into that moment and finding where you are in my case, the book and the narrative and the structure and the political philosophy, and coming back to the point that where you last left off, remembering what it was that you were building, like a piece of architecture, and then proceeding.
I call it marinating because it really is that. Like for example, I'm a visual artist, right? So everything's aesthetics. Everything is something that I may have seen 20 years ago, but it's just sitting in the back of my subconscious, and it just sort of marinates and just plays around, and you can't. I always say to people, creativity isn't a tap. You can't turn it on. It has to just come when it comes, and that can be really frustrating. That's why they call it like writer's block or creative block.
It isn't a tap. It's more like sweat. It just sort of comes out of you when you work hard. You
usually have to go through what I call a suck, and I'm in a suck at the moment where it feels like everything's blocked and it's not coming out.
I thought you were going to say you're in a suck because you're podcasting with me right now.
That too.
Yeah,
that too.
That
I'm just trying not to insult you too many times in the first 20 minutes of the podcast.
Nah,
I just called you Martin Bryant. Like, I feel like...
but I just call your books children's picture books. So,
this is the other part. You'll be like, I've done 2 books. Well, I've done 3. This is my first book. I'm still really proud of this.
Sorry, how have I never heard of you? When did you do this?
This was 2016 or 17. It's called Benchmark. This is from my CrossFit days. And in it, if I can just steal the thunder, is all the CrossFit workouts. And it was like a way that you could journal all your PRs.
Okay, hang on. Where's your name? Show me your name.
I will show you mine. I'm in the book. There you go. Carl's J. Soda.
Okay, who she is in the book.
So the
that's
2016, there you go.
Okay,
Show me. I did this with my friend Frankie Lee Matthews, who was the photographer. That's not my photography, but I did all the design. And
Okay. Well, hold up. You didn't write a book. You drew a bunch of lines. This is a bunch of lines.
I designed this
is
book.
Copy and paste, bunch of lines, page. This is what Amazon calls a low content book. And that's a different thing.
Do you know what else this book can be? A fucking brick in the face.
You've written 2.5 books.
Do you know how long this took us?
What, to Control C, Control V, Control C, Control V?
We have a forward. Can I read you the forward? Because I have not looked at this in probably 10 years.
Buckle up, everyone.
Almost
this is going to be riveting.
Carl's designs are like old school hip hop, street without trying to be gangster, cool, cheeky, and always on the money. She was told it would fail, but was too busy training and designing her tees for a box to take notice. Benchmark was an opportunity to take her art and passion from fabric to print. How cool is that?
Thank God your quality of wank has gotten better over the years.
Yeah. I didn't write that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
that was
why.
A forward. Someone else wrote that.
No, that's rubbish compared to what you do now.
I'm not going to show this on the podcast, but this is one of my biggest Tattle Life trolls now.
Oh, yeah, right. Okay, cool.
So they're always connected to us in some capacity. But there you go. So anyway, I have 3 books, and that's enough.
Moving on. Was that your good news, or is that?
Yeah, and I did get some other good news today. Do you reckon I can tell that good news? I sent you the message about it this morning.
Yeah, look,
Too early?
No.
I'm going to be a photographer on someone's tour in Australia. I'll say that. Which is pretty cool.
Which is pretty cool because you've been a photographer now you've photographed Jordan Peterson.
Yep.
You've photographed a bunch of others, too many to name. And I got to tag along. I was your assistant in London when you photographed Jordan Peterson. And I take all the credit. my ability to carry those bags into and out of the photography studio was what made all the difference.
And our ability to stay freaking
silent.
quiet
whilst
he was on Piers Morgan.
Yeah, we won't go through that again, but that was like, watching it was actually fascinating.
Yeah.
The whole machine that operates around him to make him productive is amazing.
Do you know what? I wish I could shoot Jordan again.
Probably not a good thing to say in a podcast where we were just talking about Martin Bryant. Yeah.
Because the first couple of times it's, you just meeting someone, you're just getting to know them. Jordan's he's a professional. It's not his first rodeo. But by the third time when I shot him in London, when we were at the
O2.
Savoy.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
When I went to Savoy
with,
God, what's his name?
I wasn't there for that one. The suit designer.
Yeah. Dimitri.
Yeah.
Dimitri. Dimitri's the guy that does all of Jordan's like colourful, crazy suits. And it was just Jordan, me and Dimitri. And we were there for, I don't know, maybe 90 minutes. And we were chatting. And as we were chatting, Jordan was actually in his bathrobe eating his steak for breakfast. And then we were looking at suit and talking. And it was just one of those moments where I was able to what I call diffuse Jordan a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is like normally when someone comes in for a photograph, they're like, all right, I'm
getting photographed. Yeah. Formal.
And Jordan is like that. He's an academic. But by the time I get him relaxed and laughing and his body position changes and he's all relaxed and that's when I get some of the best photos. Yeah. Which is why he has that smiling one.
Yeah, you had some great photos of him in that suit. But I do have to say, when someone rich and powerful opens the door to their high-end hotel suite wearing a bathrobe to welcome you in, I'm sorry.
To be fair, he was just as shocked as I was. He was like, oh, because I think he just thought it was Dimitri and then I'm there with Dimitri.
Right.
And Dimitri is a strange cat. He's a very cool dude.
Yeah.
But he's different.
Yeah.
And I don't think Dimitri told Jordan or his assistant I was coming.
Right.
I just was there. Yeah. And so Jordan knows me in a very formal setting.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm at his hotel room.
That's the third time you've photographed him, yeah.
Fifth. That was the fifth time. Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. Because I was shooting him all through ARC.
You'd think you would have got it right the first time. Come on.
No, because I was so disappointed the second time I shot him when I was with you. He was wearing the same suit. I was just like,
that's right. Yeah, you said that. Yeah.
So annoying.
Mind you, how good was the BTS that I got you?
I
got you some really good little behind the scenes videos of coming in on your little screen on your camera and then back to see.
I love that because people are like, as if she did it. And then they're like, and not only that, you can hear me yelling not yelling, but being, telling him what to do. I'm like, Jordan, just drop your chin. Just just go like that. And then and everyone's like, you're so bossy to Jordan. I'm like, yeah, right.
Yeah, you got a 10-minute window to get a result. And he wants a good result just as much as you do.
And he is compliant. He acquiesced to my request.
And you can tell, like you said, it's not his first rodeo. He switched from, from I'm on a podcast with Piers Morgan to I'm in a photo shoot mode. And we just
And then he went on to another podcast. He just went bang, 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 bang. Would you say the person, I'm photographing is on par with Jordan or not quite?
I would say he's very different. If you just looked at the number of views he gets online, he probably has a lot more just because he's more prolific. He puts out a lot more quantity of content.
Media personality.
Yeah, he's probably less well known. If you just did a survey of how many people know this person's name, Jordan Peterson would probably be the bigger name. But who has the bigger regular following? Probably this guy.
Yeah. So that's a pretty cool thing. Anyway, enough about me.
Yeah.
Your good news.
Well, my good news is that I've now brought on that editor that I told you about previously.
Yeah.
And it's working out really, really well. And what's a little bit weird for me is as I say that, I have the thought of he's going to watch this and he's going to know that I'm talking about him. Which
Even
is
better.
Yeah, it's a slightly weird, like, hi. No, but he's literally just started middle of last week. Today's his 1 week. Really fast learner.
So is he shit?
No, really fast learner. I'm really, really happy. And what's happened is it's working exactly as I hoped it would. It's freed up an enormous amount of my time, but in this really perverse way, it's also made me extremely busy. And here's what I mean. I no longer have to do the editing myself, which frees up an enormous amount of time, but I now have to do more videos than ever before because otherwise he runs out of things to do. And so now I'm flat out getting more interviews, researching more stories, doing all of that. So it's been a really good evolution and what everyone should see in the coming, it's sort of already started now, but certainly in the coming weeks, a dramatic increase in the volume of the quantity of what I'm able to produce, hopefully without any reduction in the quality, because he's now taking care of literally hours of work per video.
I
on
love
my behalf.
the thumbnails he's done me dirty on, though. Thanks.
That was all me. That thumbnail with you with your tongue sticking out towards Brad Pitt, that was all me. I take 100% of the credit for that one. I was laughing my ass off thinking, I'm going to get a message from Carly, and sure enough, about an hour after the video goes up, my phone buzzes and I go, that's a message from Carly.
I was like, wow. Speaking of which, you actually do need to stay for a couple of minutes after we finish the podcast, because I actually want to do the same thing. So when we do the thumbnails for this podcast, I've just been using the same photos of each other, but I actually want some expressive photos, like are we
going to like pull faces to the camera?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not a photo shoot I look forward to, but okay, all right, fine, I'm up for it.
Yeah, so you're going to sit where you are, and I'm just going to run downstairs, grab my camera, and take the photos.
You can boss me around like I'm Jordan Peterson.
Stop. Next segment. Excuse me. Hi. Yep. This is the book I was referring to. Ooh.
The words you should know to sound smart. Mm-hmm.
So we've got to pick our word of the podcast.
Oh, word of the podcast. Okay.
So what do you reckon? We just do
literally just bang
right.
and then drop a finger.
You tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Oh, hang on. Ready?
Yep. Stop. All right. Now, right-hand page near the bottom. Perfect. All right.
We'll roll over.
Roll over.
Okay. We can. Oh wow. What does that mean? That we can't use that in the podcast.
Wow. Now I want to know what the word is.
No, it's just I just don't feel an opportunity will arise.
But that's the challenge.
Lamurga or lamurga. Hang on. Lamurgia. Lamurgia. There we go. A large black bird of the vulture family. Or maybe that might describe a politician.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was like, all right. Okay. Under that we have languid.
Languid. Yeah, languid's good. Yeah.
Languid.
What is the definition?
Languid is characterized by weakness and fatigue or lacking spirit and animation, which, to be fair, is exactly my segment. So I feel like we'll use languid.
Well, it relates to languish. So if you're languishing, it is because you are languid. So
there you go, guys.
Good word.
We are teaching you all of the things.
Yeah.
I actually really like this book because, you know, Russell Brand. Russell Brand uses a lot of words that I'm like, dude, firstly, slow down.
Yeah.
And secondly, what?
Yeah.
And so that book, I realised that, I don't know, Russell's obviously very intelligent, but he's got a very strong hold on English words from a long time ago.
He has an extensive vocabulary. I do wonder, does he use it in service of better communication, or does he use it in service of showing off?
I would argue it actually doesn't benefit his audience.
No, I don't think it
does. Excuse me, as we know, you need to dilute the message to people who are at the beginning point or at the entry point to a discussion.
Yeah.
And if you're talking over them, firstly, you become insufferable and people think you're a bit of a wanker. And also, people just tap out. They don't know what you're talking about.
The exception to that, I would say, though, is Jordan Peterson, who we've just been talking about, where he did come in and he didn't dilute his language at all for anyone.
He is is he Harvard professor?
He's a professor. I don't remember.
He's Ivy League professor.
Yeah.
You would expect that of him.
Sure. But my point, I guess, is that it hasn't hampered his ability to connect with an audience.
I don't know. When we were at the O2 Arena, and we were very, very tired, to be fair, and he was talking about Dostoevsky and going on a tangent, I was like, I want to understand you right now, but I can't.
But when it comes to connecting to an audience, there's more than just comprehension. He's the one on stage in front of 10,000 people in the O2. I think it kind of proves my point. He's connected with an audience. People show up to see him. Whether they understand him or not is different to whether they feel connected to him and want to hear more of what he's got to say.
I think, it really depends. I think your new videos, your new way of doing content, and I think this is why you've seen such a rise in your YouTube channel, is because I remember we've had this discussion multiple times. Like when you go off and you're on you're on a run.
I'm on my little hobby horse.
Yeah, like you talk really fast, and also you start to talk about things that, yes, if you were in this world, you would know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you start talking, not deliberately, not to be rude, but you start talking over people and people get lost.
Yeah.
But now what you've been able to do is take that into a 10-minute video and firstly introduce the topic, break it down, and then explain it in a way that you give anecdotes, you give examples, and people go, oh, okay, get what you. And I think that's why the message has been.
So what I do
so
is
well
I
delivered.
write what I would like to say, and then I put it into ChatGPT and say, rewrite this as though I had the IQ that was as low as Carly Soderstrom's, and it comes out as really like,
So it came out with triple digit IQ.
well, it depends on how many decimal points you want to put in it.
Well, to be fair, your audience does think I am absolutely retarded.
Well, my audience can be a little harsh sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which, I got some messages. I get messages every day. I got one that set me off this morning. It's the one that activated my almonds. I believe I mentioned it earlier.
You did. Do you want me to bring this up?
It activated my almonds so much that I sent it to you.
You
because
did.
I'd like to have a little chat about this.
And chat we will. I'm just going to make sure there is no incriminating things on my screen
Before you share it.
before I share it, because I can be a little bit.
Actually, I'm not going to be able to read it, so I'm going to pull it up on my phone.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this nasty pasty.
Well, no, he's not a nasty pasty. He's just completely clueless. And the thing with clueless people is where it gets bad is when they're completely clueless as to how clueless they are. That's when it really genuinely becomes a problem.
So here we go. So person, whoever you are.
Person. So
is this an automated response up the top?
correct. So they have sent me, I actually went back and had a look. In the last 2 years, they've sent me 10 messages.
Right.
All of them completely meaningless. Memes that aren't well constructed. Links.
Can I just interrupt? Sorry. I am not familiar with Facebook these days. I
Okay.
do not use it. So is this your Facebook page, the Toe Fulfilled Facebook page?
Correct.
And then they've
Facebook
messaged
page.
that page.
Correct. They've messaged
Okay.
the page. Okay. And so then they've got the autoresponder, which says, hi, thanks for your message. I work solo and only check my messages 2 to 3 times a week. Actually, I need to update that because I'm beginning to not work solo anymore. I only check my messages 2 to 3 times a week, which is true. Please allow a few days for me to reply. If you're looking for information on my books, blah, blah, blah. Thanks again for your message. I look forward to seeing it soon. And they replied and said, bullshit, you haven't seen any of these messages.
I love your sassy response. Or maybe I just wasn't interested. To be fair,
That's just
pretty
the
much-
honest response.
Yeah.
So I get hundreds. So if you count the comments that I receive on my posts, I'm into the thousands.
Yeah, you do get a lot of comments.
day.
Yeah.
I'm not replying to the ones that I don't think deserve a reply.
But most of the time, it's just people chatting amongst themselves, and which
A lot of
have
it
at
is, but I still have to look at it. You know,
Yeah.
in order to find the ones that deserve a reply, I still have to go
Yeah.
through and look. And so I'm reading literally thousands, in addition to the emails, the messages through my website, through my merch website, as well as all of the inboxes on all the social
Yeah.
media. So I say, or maybe I just wasn't that interested, because that's the honest truth. So he bites, and I was in a sassy mood. I was in the car. I was working on my laptop. I was in a sassy mood. Says, how would you know if you didn't look? So he's still presuming that I haven't looked. Because, of course, if I'd looked at what he had to say, of course
He's
I would have
important.
replied. That's right. I've been slaving away in the background, harvesting all this great content so you can boost your numbers, and you don't give a poopy emoji.
Oh, no, he's got the sads.
Poor man has been working ever so hard, and I've been taking him for granted. Did you know that he's been working so hard that he's sent me 10 messages in 2 years? I went back and checked.
He's been slaving away for 2 years for 10 comments.
So I said, okay, thank you for your service. Like, what does he want, a medal?
Yeah.
If 10 comments in 2 years is slaving, then thanks. What do you want for nothing? Well, maybe start by not swearing at me and whinging.
Yeah.
Like, maybe that's what I want for nothing.
Yeah,
And then he says, you talk like there's something in this for me. No, you're the one who's here. You're the one who's sending me things. What's in it for you is the hope that you get my attention. Congratulations, you've got my attention.
Oh, I love these trolls. Oh,
right.
Did I not a few episodes ago say you've changed and we're
yeah.
gonna? I told you a
Correct.
while ago you're
Yeah.
letting your ego get
You're letting
too
your
big.
ego get too big. Kissy face. Like, I'm helping you out here. I'm just, look at me.
You've changed.
No, I talk like someone who gets hundreds of messages and emails a day, which actually I should have said thousands, most of which contain little to nothing of note, i.e. yours. Have a good one. To which she replies, wow, and you read one of mine? Oh boy, actually I've read every single one of his. None of them were worthy of a reply. I grow beef. Okay, good, thank you. That's no, genuinely, like, okay, he works a real job. He works hard. I don't have time to get everything done. I pay somebody to help. Must be nice. You were doing a job you made for yourself. I'm reasonably sure that he decided to be a beef farmer. So I could say that he's doing a job that he made for himself. I'm not quite sure the point he's making. If you don't have time to read your correspondence, either get help or downsize. The way many people use social media doesn't make it okay ignoring correspondence. So now,
The entitlement, Jesus.
he is laying claim to my time. He's saying, oh, because you post content on social media, I have a right.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible.
The way people use social media doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, that's right. But the reason I
Okay.
bring him up is not actually to whinge about him. I want to draw a contrast because I want to read to you one of the other messages that I also received today.
I've got up on screen
And
for
these are just, so this is just two of the messages. There will be hundreds over the course of today that I receive into my inboxes and thousands of comments.
Because TOEFL's a big deal now.
All right. So this is what this person said to me. Hi, Topher. I'm sorry, but I'm one of those food and fibre producers from the Western District of Victoria. You know the type. 5 daughters, all successful, professionally trained and making a difference. 1 wife, original, which I think is hilarious.
My original wife.
Yeah, it's still got the OG. And the quintessential mortgage. I have the mandatory virtue signalling city-based friends with their all too keen opinions on gun control, fire services, levies, sustainable farming practices, and very happy to give us advice on how we should live and what we need to be happy. You get the picture. The farm has been in my family name since 1911, albeit that my wife and I had to purchase it from the family, and by running an off-farm business from the farm, we've managed to largely pay it down, all for what? To have the privilege of working 7 days a week against financial headwinds and a government all prepared to tax us, to tax on unrealised capital gain on superannuation, which they promised would be safe and secure and would set us up to provide ourselves with dignity after retirement till we die. If this tax is introduced, it won't be the straw that breaks the camel's back. It will be an entire B-double of hay that will flatten it and send us with it. We do not have the cash flow to service this theft. We, like you, are absolutely disgusted in this government, state and federal. It is little wonder country pride and patriotism is at an all-time low and suicide is becoming normal. I try not to be pessimistic for my family's sake, but it's bloody hard. Mate, I'll buy you a coffee, I'll buy you the whole bloody cart if that's what it takes to keep you advocating for fairness and common sense as you do. I keenly await every episode you produce as it helps me understand and bring to light the issues that we in the country are censored and separated from. I only wish that my country colleagues were patriotic enough to take more notice of what's happening around them, but it's easier to put head down and ass up buried in work. This is clearly the way the elites and the wokes want it. Keep up the good work, mate. Cheers for now.
I've got a lot to say about all of this.
I look forward to hearing it, but before we dive in there, compare the pair.
Yeah.
The level of entitlement from a nothing contribution on the one side versus someone who's actually wanted to have a sincere conversation with me.
And it's purely just grateful.
Yep. And that is why I do not reply to the vast majority of people that send me messages. I am going to put my energy into people like that.
Yeah. And just with that, I mean, I don't want to go into the farm stuff right now because this will be a 50-hour podcast. But, you know, you hear stories like that and it's gut-wrenching. It just makes me so fucking mad because that is exactly what it is. It's the inner city types who sit there in their cushy jobs, usually in the public sector, you know, and telling everyone else how they should live. And they are exactly that which they criticise. What a message. Yeah. But
and he's not wrong. A lot of farms are in superannuation funds because that's what they were told was the right way to do it.
Yeah.
And now the government, this is why I say never get into bed with the government. If you lie down with dogs, you will wake up with fleas. If you do something because the government said it's good, like solar panels on the roof, like getting a taxi license, like putting your assets into your superannuation, it is only a matter of time before they are going to change their minds and screw you over.
You know, that first person that messaged you, that is pretty evident of, like, you know how I said the attitude?
Yeah.
That is kind of the quintessential attitude of most people, right?
Unfortunately, in Australia, there is a high proportion of people, yes.
I'm important. You've forgotten about me.
Yeah.
Up until literally 2 minutes ago, mate, I didn't even know you existed.
Didn't you notice the memes that I sent you? 5 of them in the last 12 months. How could you not have replied?
And this is I get the same thing. Oh, you're too important, are you?
Yeah.
What have I got on Instagram? I've got 37,000 followers or something.
Yeah.
I get a lot of DMs, and like you, I might open it up, and out of curiosity, I might open the first couple, and then I think I should reply, and then I'm like, hey, shit, Carly, you're on your phone again. Put your phone down. Yeah. And I constantly have this battle of
and those aren't the things that pay the bills.
Correct.
And the bills keep coming in. People say, oh, it's just about the money. Well, yeah, for my landlord, it is just about the money. For the grocery store, it is just about the money. And if I try and walk out with food for my family without paying the money.
Well, not only that, every time you pick up your phone, you waste a good 20 minutes.
Yeah.
By the time that you pick it up, do what you need to actually do with the reason you picked it up.
Yeah.
I've done this so many times where I'm absent-minded about it. I pick up my phone going, oh, I'm going to check this thing. And then all of a sudden I'm on Instagram, I'm in an email.
Yes.
And it's 25 minutes later, I'm like, shit. So when I'm in my DMs, I go, okay, you get 2 minutes. And I literally watch and I'll go, okay, so it's 12:03. I'm going to round the clock up to 12:05. You get 2 minutes. That goes like this.
You just gave away the fact that we're not live when we go live on YouTube at night.
People know this. I've alluded to that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, fine then.
Surprise.
Surprise!
But we are live every Monday at 7 p.m.
Every Monday at 7 p.m. on the Oddcast HQ.
Yes. And if you haven't shared the show, please do. We're
Please
now
do.
at the 39-minute mark and we would love you to share it, please.
Well, should we get started then? I mean, 39 minutes in, we should probably say something.
I think we've given people lots of value already.
I think it's been a good little
speaking of
prologue.
comments, okay, so I want to turn this into a segment. I got this comment. So we did on our live on Monday, we were talking about billionaires and how they're villainized.
Yes.
And I made mention of Canva and Melanie Perkins and her husband, and there's another guy. They are now billionaires having invented Canva. And this guy has written on your video, and I'm going to read it. Hang on, I'll bring it up on screen.
So hang on. For those who don't know, they made Canva, which is like graphic design sort of software stuff, that made people's lives a lot easier and in fact cheaper
It made it accessible
as well.
to
made
people.
it accessible. That's a good word. Yeah.
For a very entry-level part of graphic design.
And so they became billionaires because they made other people's lives easier.
Yes.
Which is how the vast majority of billionaires
Well, they
have done
also disrupted a monopoly.
Yes.
Adobe had the monopoly.
Yeah.
And they still kind of do. There's a lot of players in the market now, so they would still be the biggest player.
Yeah.
But now there's a lot of people like Canva who have been able to take away market share just for doing things a bit differently.
And I would also argue that without Canva, products like CapCut wouldn't necessarily have come through in the same way because Canva showed that disruption was possible.
Yes. And this is the thing about complacency. And so I'm going to read you this comment. This was on the video. Graphic designers are a dime a dozen and are paid a pittance. If you're going into a job, you have been warned. Billions of people around the world are great artists and about 0.00000000001% make any money out of it. Software can be learned by anyone, especially with training discs. You just gave away your age, Boomer, and YouTube.
Okay, can I pick up one of them? The discs is hilarious. But also the abuse of the word great. Billions of people, by definition, cannot be great because great is actually, it's an absolute term, but it actually really exists as a comparative term. To be great, you have to be comparatively really good compared to other people. There are only, 8-9 billion people on the planet. If billions multiple, so at least 2 billion people are great artists, that means that a great artist just has to be better than 4 other people.
Yeah.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Like that is a total abuse of language.
This frustrates me. Like I've actually talked about this extensively on my own Instagram. But what I want to address here is, again, complacency and this victim mindset. You know, we complain about it on the left side of politics, you know, with the woke stuff. This is like something that runs deep through Australians' veins.
Yeah.
Like, those jobs are redundant now. This is the thing. If you think there's no money in creativity, you've already lost.
Correct.
Congratulations, you know?
Well, it's that old saying, I think, was it Einstein who said, those who think that they can and those who think that they can't are both right.
Yes.
You know, if you're sitting there going, I can't make money in the arts, you're going to prove yourself right.
So there is a huge difference between being talented and being successful. There are plenty of people who are talented who do nothing with it. You hear that there's a billion and one expressions for this.
Yep.
Like hard work but beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that, I see this all the time. And you see people who, you know, are genuinely talented, but they do nothing with it because they don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the truly most successful people in the world. Like look at Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, like some of the best basketballers of all time, and what they did to become truly great. It wasn't they had a talent, but they nurtured their talent.
Thousands of free throws a day.
Yeah.
Just
like
to drill that.
outworking everyone. They're up early, they're in bed late, they're practicing. Things that most people just genuinely don't want to do.
Yeah.
And I say this with photography, and it applies to everything. This is obviously just the industry that I'm in. There are 1 billion and one photographers. Anyone can buy a camera. You're right. But can they all be great photographers? No, because it takes so much fucking hard work.
Yeah.
Not just hard work, firstly, because this is the thing. Old mate here has already deduced it down to just software.
Yeah.
It's just software. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So visual communication isn't a language.
No, you just put it in the chat GPT, you'll be right.
And this is what boils my blood, because it's not just creatives and graphic designers. It's across every industry. You can learn a very entry-level amount of proficiency and do something fairly mediocre. I go into Canva every day and I see all these templates and they're all fucking rubbish.
Yeah.
And they look like no one knows what they're doing because they don't. That's what Canva did. It gave people a beginning entry point into doing things that they couldn't afford to outsource to a graphic designer.
That's like saying anyone can afford to buy a trowel, therefore being a bricklayer isn't special.
100%. Or anyone can afford to buy a pair of pliers, therefore being an electrician is not a specialist skill.
I have at home a Sony camera that is a full frame camera that has a full size lens mount, and I've had in the past, I had a G Master lens. That's a beautiful camera and lens combination. You can take world-class photographs with that. The problem with that camera and that lens was the person holding it. Right. I never took any photographs that are ever going to get sold for money. Why?
Yeah.
Not because the hardware wasn't capable of it. If I tried to lay bricks, it would look like they got laid by a chicken. Okay, it's not going to look good. I can have the same trowel, the same wheelbarrow, the same cement mixer. I can buy the highest quality bricks that money can buy. It's still going to be a rubbish end result because I don't know what I'm doing.
Can I show you something?
Sure.
This is one of my photos that has made me the most money. And I mean from selling it as a print.
Yeah.
This is Jan Jack Beach. This photo alone in prints, I have made, I think now, around $11,000 off it, selling it as individual prints.
Yeah.
What do you think that was taken on?
Gosh, the fact that you're asking me the question makes me assume that it wasn't an impressive piece of equipment. So I'm just going to go with you pulled out your phone.
That was shot on an iPhone 8. When did that come out? 2017?
Shame that it was an Apple product. That's a real crying shame.
iPhone 8, and it's made me $11,000.
Could have been a good photo if you'd had a Samsung.
This was shot, I think, God, like when did the 8 come out? So yeah, 2017?
Yeah.
Or 18, somewhere there.
That is a really nice pic. But it fits in that genre of kind of that, almost that negative space pic where it's kind of, it's just a nice thing on the wall.
It was just I was literally on a walk and I looked to my right and I was like, wow, that's beautiful. Snap.
Yeah.
And then all I did was go into Photoshop and just drag the luminance up a little bit.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's not presets. It's not the $10,000 camera gear.
Yeah.
It's being able to see the thing.
Okay. But someone would say, but anyone could have taken that photo. If it was taken on an iPhone, anyone could have taken that photo.
Didn't.
Yeah, but you didn't. Okay, so that's one reply. But another reply is, okay, that's photography. And in theory, yes, if you happen to look in the right direction and frame it correctly, because framing's super important.
Composition.
Way more important than non-photographers actually give it credit for. But that's different, again, to graphic design. And we had a great illustration of this. So as most of our regular viewers will know, you're working on a full revamping of all my brand, my colors, everything. And that's work in progress. And just earlier this week, you sat down with me and my growing team and showed us the work in progress. And it was so funny because you showed us the end result.
Yeah. The fancy, polished presentation.
And a good logo and a good color scheme and a good all of that should have you go, oh yeah, of course. Like, and that's part of the objective is it has to be obvious that it's associated. It can't be like, oh, I don't know what's that got to do with anything.
Yeah.
And so the temptation then is to go, oh yeah, of course. You just drew that. Like you just did the obvious thing.
Yeah.
And then what happened was we were sort of talking about some tweaks and things, and you went across to your working document that showed the steps that you'd gone through to get to that point. And I know that certain of my team members, sort of their minds were a little bit blown because they're like, that all of a sudden that paradigm, because I know, because I've seen your work before. Yeah. But for them, it was like, oh, she didn't just draw the obvious thing.
Yeah. So what Toph is referring to is when I'm doing a logo, I actually start with pencil. So I start on a pad of paper and I'm just like, okay, what do I know about TOFA? And this is literally my workflow. Okay, TOFA, stay free, politics, TF, TOFA field. And I just write down the obvious things that I know. Yep. And that's the first part of brand, the most obvious recollections you have when you think of the thing. And then you go, okay, so what associates with that? So think, brain, free, cage, you start to play down things like that and you start mapping it out. And then I just sort of doodle, and they're literally like second doodles, like thought, draw, thought, draw, thought, draw. And it's just to get it coming through. And then what I do is I go on to Adobe Illustrator and then I just take something that draws my eye and I go, I actually like that. Let's develop that a little bit. And then you end up getting it to a dead end. You go, no, I don't like that. Okay, back to this one. Oh, let's try that. Okay, cool. What happens if we add a few colors in? No, those colors don't work. Let's go again. And so what you do is as you progress across the artboard, you see my workings out. Yeah. If you're a mathematician, think of it as like all the workings out, all the algebra.
The formulas to get to the final formula.
And it's interesting because I did maths method at school, and when I did my exam, there was so much emphasis
but
on.
Carly, I thought you were silly. You were an imbecile.
Yeah.
You couldn't possibly have done maths method.
I'm an imbecile that finished in one of the top percentiles of my enter score, but whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
But, you know, I'm a dumbass. But, no, so with math methods, my issue was always I could give you the answer. It was the right answer, but I couldn't show you
your workings.
how I did it.
Yeah.
And my maths teacher would literally, like, berate me and say, like, come on, you have to show the formula. And now I just realised it just occurred then. I'm really sorry to my teacher. That, yeah, like, it's exactly that. Like, I can show you the finished product, but if you can't see the journey to get there, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. And the journey becomes a part of it, but also the journey puts the lie to this attitude of, oh, well, if I've got the software or if I've got AI, then I can be a graphic designer too. That's a dime a dozen. Well, yeah, okay, graphic design software is now a dime a dozen. AI tools are a dime a dozen.
It's the same as guitars. Anyone can buy a guitar. Not everyone can be Jimi Hendrix.
My daughter got a guitar for her 5th birthday, and I can tell you, she's not Jimi Hendrix yet.
Yeah. It's like anything, you know, at the end of the day, I could do 4,000 podcasts on this. I call it time on tools. This is what's going to be on my gravestone.
The 10,000 hours sort of idea that's been
10,000 hours is just the beginning.
Is the beginning, yeah.
10,000 hours is how you become proficient.
Yeah.
How you become truly talented and world class is just repetition, iteration, go.
Well, people say to me, how can you sit down and talk to a camera the way that you do in your videos? And I'm like, I've been doing it for 16 years.
Do you know what's funny?
That's the number one answer.
About this is because it's very clear that you have 16 years and I don't. And it gets pulled out in the comments. And like there's part of me that does get a little bit frustrated because I'm being compared to someone who's been doing it almost 2 decades.
It's okay. You'll only be 45 by the time you catch up. It's fine.
Well, not only that, like I've realised...
No, 55. Sorry, you'll only be 55.
No, so a good girlfriend of mine, Loz James, she's a presenter. And I help a lot of my friends do their social media content. And Loz James is trained as a presenter.
Sure.
She has that like broadcast voice.
Yeah.
And like it's funny because that's how she's been trained. So whenever we do social media stuff,
which is just a persona.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it's so habitual for her. She just snaps into it.
Yeah.
And so when she's talking, all of a sudden her voice drops and it becomes slow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, stop being a presenter.
Yeah, correct.
Just talk normal.
So my dad has a background in radio.
Yeah.
And he's the reason why I learned to enunciate my words the way that I do and not sound like I'm Australian. That was my dad's influence when I was growing up. But my dad was raised in an era where being on radio required you to have that radio voice.
Yes.
And he does that, but it's really funny to watch him because he can't kick out of it.
Yes.
He can't actually, the minute there's a microphone in front of him, he can't sit and have a conversation and riff the way that we do.
Yes.
But of course, this is what's normal now. And a lot of the voices on radio are just like this. The radio voice is gone. It's a thing of the past now. And so I hear him and I'm like, oh, what a shame. He's got a great voice, but if only he could just not be a presenter, like drop that persona.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there's, like I said before, you know, I can write really well, but I'm realizing there's a skill shortage here on my behalf that I don't have. I've never done this before.
Yeah.
Yes, I can talk underwater with a mouthful of marbles, but can I do it in a way that is
But only for about 35 to 40 seconds before you pass out. Yeah.
But, you know, you realize it's a skill. And so, you know, like we've talked about this with the podcast and what we've had to learn, that trajectory that I'm on is like just across the board. I'm learning so many things.
Yeah.
And there's a level of expectation from the community that's watching this going, well, why is she so shit in comparison to Topher? Well, because I just haven't spent enough time doing it yet.
You're not in most areas, only in that very, very specific area of, you know, I've got 16 years of the contest of ideas. I've interviewed some of the greatest minds on some of the most controversial topics over my journey. I've analysed and researched time and time again and constantly had to ask myself the question, how do I put this into words and communicate it in a way that's going to connect with my audience? I've spent 16 years working on that very specific particular skill.
Yeah.
And yes, in that area, there is a big difference between the two of us.
But I think that just highlights my point that it shows. It shows that you've done that.
Yeah.
And that's why when you contrast the two of us together, there is that sagacious chasm.
But then if I sat down and tried to design my new brand, there would be a sagacious chasm between your design and mine.
And so it's really interesting when you read the comments, and I encourage you guys to read comments as well. I talk about this all the time. Aside from the bot comments, you can usually distinguish which ones those are. But when you watch...
Or can you?
Oh, come on. Come on. It's so easy for me.
The AI wants you to believe you can
No,
tell
maybe
the
it's because
difference.
I'm studying AI and I know how lackluster a lot of the vocabulary is. And
Because you are AI, isn't it?
I am. How did you know?
Yeah. John Connor. Yeah.
But just to bring it back to things, I just wanted to talk about creatives and the possibilities of making money. So,
Yes.
when people say you can't make money, well, we've just proved that Melanie Perkins, she's not a designer by trade. She's actually in marketing, but she saw an opportunity because she was teaching
I
design.
don't know what you're referencing. Melanie Perkins.
She's
what's she done?
the founder of Canva.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
Yeah,
yes. I didn't
yeah.
recognize the name. Yep. Yeah.
Sorry. But let's talk about Damien Hirst. Are you familiar with his work?
Not at all.
Okay, so he's the guy that dissected a cow and put it in formaldehyde and displayed it.
That's fun.
Yeah, so...
as far as pastimes go, yeah. Okay.
And he did it with a shark. And so...
Does he do like big exhibits and displays that travel around the world and stuff?
Yes, huge.
Yeah, okay.
He's
So
prolific.
I'm familiar with that
Yeah. So
exhibit, yes.
I'm going to bring it up. Damien Hirst. He is... he's a billionaire. He's an artist he's a self-made billionaire.
Show me the cow. Show me the cow cut in half.
So that's the shark cut in
Right.
half. He did it with a sheep. Where's the cow?
I guess you can't cut it in half with a laser because that'd cook it as it went. Like you need it to be left raw.
I can't remember how he does it, but it's in formaldehyde, and he literally so it's cut in half there.
Wow.
Yeah, just like. I think you freeze them, like
Yeah,
you cryogenically freeze them.
I was going to say, how do you stop it from just kind of like slooping back out again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he sort of thrust onto the
Wow.
scene, I think early 2000s. I remember
Can you
studying
make
him.
that bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. I studied him,
Show me the cow gizzards.
if I just zoom in like
That is so interesting.
Yeah. And there's another German artist who does the same thing. I just realised our little pictures are in the way for people. Okay, that's it. That's fine.
This is
Just-
riveting podcasting.
But yeah, so Damien Hirst, right? He is the master of self-promotion. He is a marketing genius. He is now a billionaire, right? So you
Good
tell
on
me
him.
you can't make money off art.
Yeah.
Annie Leibovitz, one of the most prolific photographers of all time, works for Vanity Fair, shoots for Vogue. She is now worth, I think, 600 million. She made it, lost it, accumulated it back.
The only reason I don't own an Annie Leibovitz book, through no fault of my own, my wife wanted it, is because we came across it at a department store in London and the thing weighed about 3 kilograms and we didn't have the spare luggage
I have
allowance.
most of them, so if she
Yeah.
ever wants to look at it. Let's contrast to someone who's new. Virgil Abloh. He's the guy that was behind Off-White. It was a big brand. And then he got poached by Louis Vuitton to be the creative director.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is a guy, he worked with Kanye West. This is a whole thing in the street world. He accumulated a net worth of 100 million and he was a graphic designer.
Yeah.
Oh, but he got
Yeah.
paid pittance. He doesn't
Yeah.
make any money.
But let's go completely the other end. There are people who are now making a small fortune working from home. Have you ever seen, I'm sure you would have, particularly on Instagram is where I've seen it, these people who do pencil drawings
Yeah.
that look unbelievable.
CJ Hendry.
They are 100% photographs, except that they're not.
I'll bring her up.
They're hand-drawn in grey lead pencil.
No. So this is CJ. I think I mentioned to this just before the podcast. So CJ is a Australian artist. She now lives in New York.
Yeah.
And she's one of those people that draws lifelike looking
Yeah.
thing. That is a pencil drawing.
Yeah.
That is not a photograph.
Now, these people get enormous, the ones that are good, the ones that are really genuinely good, get enormous amounts of reach and following on social media.
Yes.
And that is able to be monetized in its own right.
Yes.
Now, this is where you said there are people who are talented but not successful. You can be talented, build an enormous audience on social media and still be broke.
Yeah.
Or you can be talented, build an enormous audience on social media and be living really well and paying your bills. That's the business side of it, whether you can do that. And that's essentially, I'm going through that same process here. I can be a really good communicator and be broke, or I can be a really good communicator and be able to pay my bills and do the right thing by my family.
Yeah.
That doesn't come down to my communication skills. That comes down to the business skills that I then put in behind the particular offering that I have, in my case,
Yeah.
communication. In their case, these are very, very talented people who can draw things that are just, they bend my brain. I can't even draw. I can't draw. You get me to try and draw something, it looks like it was drawn by a 5-year-old. And these people, it looks like it was photographed on a high quality camera.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
So CJ, I was just seeing how much she's worth. So one of her drawings, like the original, goes for anywhere between 300,000 to 500,000
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
So she just did a Chadston exhibition. It's still on now, actually. And I went and had a look. And in there is one of her.
Oh, that's the Chadston exhibition right there. That's Chadston. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this one here, this very drawing, that you can see. Sorry, I'm aware it's really small.
Yeah,
if I make
that's
it
all right.
any bigger.
We'll figure out the tech as we go along, but that's okay.
So this picture just sold for $450,000 US.
Wow.
It's hand drawn.
I can't even tell what that is.
It's like a keychain. So her exhibition is called Lost and Found.
$450,000 US for a realistically drawn keychain. Wow.
So you're telling me that creatives can't make fucking money? Get fucked.
Yeah.
Like get actually fucked.
And but I mean, my point is there's those ones that we've all heard about, they're making that kind of money. But actually there's an enormous number whose names you would never have heard unless you're one of the people that follows them on social media. But they've just found an audience and they've found a way.
But this is what people don't realize. You don't have to be Annie Leibovitz to make good money.
Correct. And that's more my point is, someone might say, oh, but they're in the 0.00001%. That's, I already said that they can make money. It's the rest of them that can't. But actually, there's an enormous proportion of the rest of them that are.
To old mate, whatever what was his name? Did he have a name?
Who knows? Who cares?
Who knows? Mr.
Yeah.
I've self-sustained myself for almost 20 years off my graphic design, and I have earned comfortable six figures for
but
plenty of time.
importantly, that graphic design has taken different business expressions. You've had clothing. You had a clothing product line. You've done photography. You've done an enormous amount of graphic design, branding. You do personal branding consultations with people. So that one artistic skill has been turned into multiple different business products.
It's a trade at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Being trained as a graphic designer is one of the best things as an entrepreneur because firstly, it's incredibly expensive to hire someone to do this well.
Yep.
And so I just wanted to bring up one more person who made a ton of money. So Jonathan Ive, he's the Apple's former chief design officer.
Right.
His work for iMac, iPod, and iPhone literally reshaped global culture. You think about all those early Apple graphics that literally turned tech on its head. It made it sexy.
And he is single-handedly responsible for the chiropractic industry becoming a multi-billion-dollar industry because he had us all walking around like this.
And this is the thing. And like his design is the reason Apple became a $1 trillion company.
Yeah.
There's a reason Apple has the prestige that it does is because it looks good.
Yeah.
And this is so when you say graphic designers don't make money, graphic design is usually the visual communication link between a product that succeeds and fails.
Yeah.
And bad design will objectively lead to failure.
And I can attest to that on the other side of it because bad graphic design is all I'm capable of, and yet I tried for many years to just do it all myself. And the lack of design skill, the lack of a good visual aesthetic, the lack of an understanding of how to structure a nice balanced image, the lack of color science, all of that has very much held back my work. And it's no coincidence that it was after I got you to make my brand for the first time in 2021 that I began to get traction. And I'm convinced that as my brand gets redone by you, this is going to be what allows me to get access to sort of the global market.
Well, what people don't recognize, and this is not just about graphic design, this is about brand specifically. It's the way that you communicate for people who haven't heard from you. So what I will see, and I guarantee it'll happen pretty quick, as soon as we roll out your new brand, people will be like, oh, why did you do that? It looks like shit. The old version's way better, of which I designed both.
Yeah.
And I've designed both for multiple reasons. And so when we were looking at yours, we were like, well, when I designed your first version, it was 2021. We were in the height of lockdowns.
We were in combat mode.
Yeah. And that your brand and everything to do with it was to reflect that.
And it's confrontational, it's aggressive, it's good people break bad laws, it's advocating civil disobedience. The photography was moody and dark. The typeface is upright and bold and strong.
Yeah.
All of those design choices, because I remember you taking me through that whole process, all those design choices were made because of who I was at the time and where I was trying to get to and who I was trying to appeal to at that point in time.
You were trying to appeal to the dissidents, the people who were disenfranchised and felt vulnerable and alone.
Yeah.
But now, and I don't think people recognize this because I've talked about this multiple times on the podcast, like the whole you've changed thing.
Yeah.
You have to change.
Correct.
You have to evolve.
I'm no longer the skinny kid shooting hoops down at the local basketball court.
And that's the thing for people to take you seriously. And so and just I'm saying this to Topher's followers. So maybe you can clip this if you're the editor and put this up. So people want people like Topher to speak up and do what you're doing, a bit like the message you got from the farmer.
Yeah.
But then they'll criticize the way you do it because you've changed from the way that they first found you.
Yeah.
And the issue that a lot of your audience doesn't seem to recognize is that yes, okay, you've built this audience, but it's a very small audience of the same person, right? It's people who already don't like the government, aren't happy with the way things are, and want to see change. What do you do with the other 99% of people that you haven't quite crossed over to yet? And people go, oh, you've got 90,000 subscribers on YouTube. That's a lot. Well, actually, no disrespect.
No,
but
it's not. It's
in
not
the
a lot.
scale of Australia and the scale of the world, it's not even a drop in the ocean. It's insignificant.
You're not even on the map in the US till you've got over 1 million.
Yes. Right. And I'm not saying that to criticize that you don't have that many. I'm also saying it's not that big a number. It's big to someone who only has 1,000 subscribers.
But also, this is the difference between, do I just want to build a choir that will sing along with me and I can monetize and make a living out of, or do I actually want to make a difference?
Yes.
Because if I want to make a difference, by definition, I have to keep appealing to the people that aren't yet in my audience.
And just again on the whole grifting thing, because I love it when people, have a crack at people being grifters because they're trying to do something. When you want to actually have an impact and make change, it does require investment. It requires people, and not everyone. And I guarantee most of you guys watching this, when push came to shove and Toph was like, all right, I need all hands on deck. I need everyone here because we're all going to volunteer for this thing to make this change. No one shows up because there's no incentive to show up.
I have an amazing audience.
No. I'm saying...
Yeah, my audience, I'm going to defend my audience here and defend their honour. No, I have an amazing audience. They showed up in huge numbers, both in protests, but also at the cinema tour of Battleground Melbourne. They've showed up to event after event. They support me in lots of different ways.
But there would be a limit to how much they're willing to show up.
There would still be probably only 10% of them that have done that and 90% that haven't.
And this is my point. A lot of people will sit there from the sidelines and cast judgment, a bit like old mate. But what you require, and we've seen this when we've worked with, your Jordan Petersons and things like that, you need a huge team. You need a lot of cash. Yeah. You need to be able to, and like when it gets to think, I think we talked about Rammstein last week, right?
Rammstein.
People appreciated that.
Du hast nicht.
Okay, you go, all right. Think about how this all started. I know literally nothing about Rammstein, but we'll run with them because it makes sense. So you think about someone who starts out when they're a teenager playing the guitar, like old mate said. Everyone can buy a guitar.
Yeah.
And then this person just becomes obsessed with it.
Yeah.
I'm going to use Taylor Swift. She's probably a better example because I know nothing about
it. No, let's use an even better example, the Beatles.
I wasn't even born when they're on the charts.
Because for 3 or 4 years, I don't remember exactly, they were in Europe and they were doing 2 to 3 gigs a day for years on end before they came back to England, and suddenly they went big.
Yeah.
And they went big because by that point in time, their craft had been perfected. For the standards of their time, they were elite.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people. Let's use Ed Sheeran. I think Ed Sheeran's a really good example.
Let's just use all of them. Let's just every musician ever.
Ed Sheeran was a busker. That's how he started.
Doesn't surprise me.
He was a busker. Yeah. So literally someone that was on the street corner, and so everything that Ed Sheeran does is with the pedals down the, what do you call those? They loop.
Pedal board, the looping.
He does looping.
Yeah.
So he would make a sound, record it, and then loop it. And so I've seen him live twice, and it's just him. He doesn't have a band.
Yeah.
Well, he might now, but he didn't when I saw him. Yeah. It's just him making loops, and he'll play the drums on the side of the guitar, loop that. He makes a couple of sounds, loops that.
Yep.
And so Ed Sheeran busked for years and years and years and years, and now he's worth hundreds of millions, and he's super successful and really well known. He's really good at what he did because he spent years as a busker just practicing.
But he crafted so much more than just the musical skill. That's why he's so incredible in ad-lib and improv moments, and he's so personable in interviews. Have you seen the story that Jamie Foxx tells about Ed Sheeran?
No.
So Jamie Foxx, Hollywood actor is how most people know him. Actually, he's a big music producer. He's big in the music scene, very, very successful, and he's one of the reasons why a lot of other artists are successful.
You give me money.
Yeah. Now, he... there's some sort of a music club. I don't remember the details of it. There's some sort of a music club. It's basically an African-American, like a black music kind of vibe, and they bring up these up-and-coming musicians, and Jamie Foxx is known to kind of be a part of it and brings up all these up-and-comers, and it's kind of a big deal. And for whatever reason, I don't remember how it came about, but Ed Sheeran ends up staying with Jamie Foxx, sleeping on his couch.
Yeah, okay.
And he gets him along to this club and says, hey, I'm going to bring him up. And Jamie Foxx is down the back. Ed Sheeran gets announced. And this is, no one knows who he is. And he walks up there. He's got his ukulele, his ginger hair, skinny white kid. And the way Jamie Foxx tells the story, it's worth just Googling it. Jamie Foxx telling a story about Ed Sheeran. One of his buddies comes up to him and goes, yo, what's this, man? Like, you can't disrespect the club, man. You can't disrespect the audience. Like, this assumption about, like, this is not going to go well. And Jamie said, within 10 minutes, Ed had the entire place pumping, fists in the air, cheering, chanting, singing along. He just completely owned it.
Yeah.
And you see that skill, but that skill wasn't an innate thing. That it doesn't surprise me at
learned.
all to have you say he was a busker. Of course, that makes perfect sense.
It's no different to comedians.
Yeah.
They cut their teeth in a lot of clubs. They get
Yeah.
no laughs. They
Yeah.
have to refine and
Get booed off stage, get heckled, get bomb over and over again. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's realize again this attitude of Australians of just shitting on people having a crack. It
Yeah.
just infuriates me. And I've seen this in my own hater thread, Tattle Life, whatever. Where people sit there and they go, "Oh, she's a photographer. She's not very good." By Annie Leibovitz standards, probably not very good. I've actually only been working as a photographer since 2018. I'm self-taught.
I am so crippled when it comes to creative design that I looked at that folio book of Annie Leibovitz and I flicked through it and I went, okay, and I don't get it.
Yeah.
I genuinely, I just went, However, when you did the first family photo shoot that you did with us after we found you during COVID, I was worried that you didn't seem to be taking it very seriously. And so when you were photographing other members of my family, I looked over your shoulder and of course you take the photo and then it comes up on the screen for a moment. You can see what you've just shot. And that's when I went, oh, actually, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to me that this Annie Leibovitz is like, oh, I don't get it. I can't see it.
Yeah.
What is it?
Okay, so I'll tell you the quick story of Annie. So she was young in the 60s and she just happened to be around at the rock and roll era.
Sure.
So when the Rolling Stones were just getting started, Rolling Stone magazine had just started.
Yeah.
And she was not a groupie, not in that sense, but she was literally enmeshed in the scene.
Yeah, she was in there.
She was in there
Yeah.
and she was rocking up to all the gigs and she
Yeah.
just had her camera.
Yeah.
And she was documenting.
Yeah,
So
okay.
she had the proximity to these people
Yeah, it was
before
the
they
access.
were known. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then as time went on, she worked for Rolling Stone for years and years and years. And what really put Annie on the map is she shot the last photo of John Lennon before he got assassinated.
Yeah, wow.
And so she took that famous photo where John Lennon's naked and he's hugging Yoko Ono, and it was
Right.
used
Yep,
on the cover
yep,
of Rolling Stone.
yep.
So she
That
took
was
that.
when they were doing their look at me staying in bed
Yeah.
protest thing.
Yeah, so she took that photo in the morning and
Yeah.
he was assassinated that afternoon.
Wow.
And the only reason that she had no intentions of that photo ever being seen, but the reason she did is because she realized that was the last time and it was a really soft moment for him, like a
Yeah.
really beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And so that went on the cover of the Rolling Stone with no words. It was just that.
Yeah, wow.
And so that's kind of her claim to fame. I mean, she's done lots of amazing things since then. She
Yeah.
had a controversy with the Queen. She asked the
Okay.
Queen to take her crown off when she was photographing the Queen of England.
Wow.
And so this was actually one of those massive scandals. She was photographing Queen Elizabeth and had her full regalia on.
Yeah.
And obviously different crowns mean different things, coronation crown and so on and so forth.
There's a lot of formality around what you do and
Steeped
don't
in tradition.
do. Yep.
And Annie Leibovitz is an American. She doesn't understand it. So she's walked into there, and from what I understand, there's a lot of protocols when it comes
Yes.
to being in the royal palace. And, basically was like, so the Queen's walked in her full regalia with like a cape and the crown. And Annie's like, oh, can we just do one without the crown? And the Queen's like,
No. You don't just walk in and be like, hey, Your Madge, do you mind sucking on a cigar for a minute?
Just take-
it just, no.
so that it was just one of those things. And I remember back that this is like, I want to say like 2010, somewhere there. And it was a scandal. It was seen as such a scandal.
Passed me by completely.
But yeah, so anyway, just to round it out, like there is money to be made in literally every industry. I want to give you another example.
So before you do, there is money to be made anytime you can do or create something that other people see value in higher than what it cost you to make.
Okay, so I want to contrast this out of the creative industry because everyone will be like, she's just triggered because she's a creative. All right.
You are, but yeah.
There's a guy called Site Inspections. I've talked to you about him before.
Guy, so talk about a guy that can just build an audience.
And
this is brilliant.
I think he's just a building inspector. Is that his profession?
As best as I'm aware, yeah.
I actually know nothing about conveyancing and building.
No, so he's not a conveyancer. So site inspections, he goes in, he has a look at the handiwork of construction crews.
Before it gets handed
that
over.
That sort of stuff. I think that's the main body of work, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm so sorry, guys. I'm just
But it would
very
also
unfamiliar with
be
this stuff.
progress inspections. So when a construction has been financed by a bank, they'll need to get interim progress reports to make sure that
and
the
he's a
work's being
third party.
done.
So the
Correct.
builder,
He's independent.
Yeah, so the builder has their checks and he goes in there to make sure everything's cool.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's been able to amass a huge following.
Good on him.
In a very short amount of time because all he does is like he puts his GoPro on his And it's funny because we watch him a lot now because I just find it really interesting to see just how deplorable the Australian building industry is.
Yeah.
And look at us, another tangent. Holy shit, we're here.
Tangent time, tangent time, tangent time.
So site inspectors, like he wears like a pair of Nike trackies. He's got runners on, but then he has this like vest.
Yeah.
So he looks like he's a SWAT team member. And then on his vest, he's got like all these little doodads that he needs for, his measuring tape and whatever. And he puts his GoPro there. And he goes in and he basically says non-compliant.
Yeah.
Good from far, far from good. He has,
Yes.
and I don't know what ethnicity he is, but his accent's
But it adds
great.
to it, doesn't it? It's perfect.
And these one-liners, like now, G and I say this all the time: good from far, far from good. Non-compliant, and it just becomes part of the cultural zeitgeist, right?
Yeah.
And what I love about this is like, how many site inspectors are there in the world? Probably lots.
Lots, yeah.
And he just went, you know what? I'm going to start filming this, and not only that, he's actually taken down and talk about good work.
Yeah.
Like it's at the end of the day, this is entertainment. This podcast is entertainment.
Yeah, yeah.
So people are going to spend their time with you if they feel entertained. But so he offers that. But then he offers education.
Correct.
He's showing people the building standards and where things are falling short. So even if you can't afford to hire him, because I imagine he requires a big fee now, because he's quite well known, you can then maybe check things for yourself. So you'll go, it needs to be 5 mil from this, or the flushings are wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you could go be like, oh, hang on a minute, mine looks wrong too. Okay, so he's empowering people. And then further to that, he's actually putting heat on these dodgy builders and he's taking them down.
There's been a couple of high-profile examples
Very
of
big
that,
ones.
Where he's actually really made a difference on behalf of the customers, the owners.
And then Adrian Portelli actually ended up hiring him. And this is what happened. So Adrian Portelli, I bring him up a lot. He's a self-made billionaire in Australia.
Yeah.
He has a home in Queensland that was getting built. And he, thanks to having this audience and having a lot of like people around him, Adrian Portelli sees him and goes, you know what, I'm going to hire this bloke, flies him up to Queensland, gets him into his mansion. And then Adrian Portelli's like, okay, I've got a whole host of issues, building defects that I now want to be done.
Fixed, yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You're telling me that you can't make money in your industry. You can. You just have to be creative with it.
Literally anything. So this is what gets me. People say, oh, well, with AI, everyone's going to be out of a job. What are people going to do for a job? Well, the same thing as what happened when steam power took over a lot of jobs, and all of a sudden, instead of having 1,000 people in a factory, you only needed 100. What happened to the other 900 people? Well, they all got other jobs. And what happens is we find new and creative ways to offer value, right? Because you can make money anytime you can offer value that is perceived by the customer to be worth more than what it costs you to create. You can make money. You can arbitrage that difference. And so the entertainment industry is now massive. So people are saying, oh, with AI, actors aren't going to be able to make any money, blah, blah, blah. Well, they said the same thing as soon as you could do recordings.
Yeah.
Like it used to be that you had to have a musician there in order to have music. There was no capacity to have music unless the musician was there in person. Then they developed the ability to record that music and play it back without the musician being present. And people said, this is going to put musicians out of business. No, what it did was it meant that music got into places where it'd never been before. Now musicians are making more money than ever. Same with actors. Oh, as soon as the film came along, oh no, we don't need an actor to put on a play anymore. We can just watch them back. They do it once and we can watch it 1,000 times. We're going to put the actors out of business. No, the actors are making more money than ever before. Things like this, podcasts like this, people are consuming more entertainment and infotainment and edutainment than ever before. And so now, one of the channels that I watch sometimes with my son is a guy over in Florida, a young guy, goes around to, because Florida is very wet and very low-lying, goes around to all kinds of, canals and so forth, and he catches fish.
Yeah.
And then some of them are worth money to sell on the market. Some of them he adds to his private collection. A lot of them he just puts back because, that's just one of the common ones, blah, blah, blah. And he just goes around with a GoPro and you watch him using different tricks and techniques and traps and nets and so forth to try and catch different kinds of fish. And then he tells you about them.
Yeah.
And it's riveting.
Yeah.
And he's this young guy. I would expect he's making far more money off the YouTube channel than he is off the fish that he catches now. How many people are out there catching fish? How many people have actually gone, hey, I could turn this into a business. You can be the most talented fish catcher in the world. Doesn't mean you're going to make money. How do you turn that into a business?
Yeah. And that's, at the end of the day, that's the attitude that I wish I could just slap out of Australians. Like, AI is a big one and everyone in my industry is talking about it. This is the end. And now I have been using ChatGPT since the week it came to market. The second I got a whiff of it, as I've explained before, I'm an early adopter and I jump on it. And
you're the crash test dummy.
I am. I'm just so curious, right? And, I've been using ChatGPT steadily since 2022, and now I'm actually declining it. I'm not using it for a couple of reasons. Like, I was being a bit lazy and going, I'll just use AI to do that. Yeah. And I was really underwhelmed.
It's very tempting. It's very tempting.
It was in the beginning because you go, oh, wow, I'm saving so much time. And then it really occurred to me, this is probably early days of my master's. I was using it for I would dump in the 60-page document that I need to read and be like, summarize this for me.
Yeah.
And then it would summarize it, but I don't actually understand it because I haven't read it.
And you're going to miss any nuance and things in there.
Yeah.
That's, for me, I've never used AI like that. I will use it as a shortcut for research. So I'm researching Jeffrey Epstein, Virginia Giuffre, Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew. I'm doing a bunch of research on those people for a video that I'm working on. And I can just type into Grok and say, tell me everything about the previous court cases against Ghislaine Maxwell. Yeah. And bang, up comes a bunch of stuff. So I use it to shortcut. Instead of me going, oh, there was this thing, how do I find that? What do I search for? No. Grok helps me to do that a lot more quickly. But I don't think I ever would use it to summarize. Yeah. Because you lose all of the nuance.
You play around with it and see how can I use this in my workflow? How can I adapt to it? And then you try it out. It's like everything. You give it a try and then go, oh, I actually don't like that. Yeah. And what I've realized is I'm actually a really good writer and AI is making me a worse writer. I'm really good, like I explained at the beginning, when I just am left alone and it just comes out of me. And I think it's because I've been trained to be an art critic, right? When I was at uni, that was one of our subjects was art, visual theory.
Right alongside math methods.
Yeah, that was at high school. I told you I wanted to be an architect and I got booted out. Anyway, I didn't get booted out. I never made it in. Anyway, but at uni we had to, so you can explain anything. You can convince anyone about art. You just have to have good arty-farty wanky
good wank.
talk. Yeah. And I became I saw it as a joke. And I think that's why I ended up becoming really good at it. Yeah. And so I remember early days at uni, like being shown all these pieces of art and just being like, this is absolute fucking rubbish.
It's a trash.
But then you'd read the writing about it and you're like, that's pretty profound, but also it's still rubbish.
Yeah, it's still, the actual piece of art is still what it was,
I was like, I'm just going to ace this by just literally giving you drivel.
But that is the art form now. The art form is what gets written on the plaque.
Which is how a banana getting strapped to a wall with duct tape is able to accrue, 17 million? It was just something stupid.
And the dude just ate it.
Yeah.
Like the dude that bought it just ate it, which I mean is fair enough because it's not going to last. Like it's not like it's actually a valuable piece, but I assume he just bought it and ate it to make a point. I actually don't know.
But a lot of what people don't understand about art, and I don't know why this episode's just about art now, but you're welcome.
It's supposed to be about whingers. We're going to have a whinger episode. I guess we're the whingers now.
Yeah, it's conversational. The whole thing is usually just a critique or an assumption or a long-held belief that people are questioning, and that's art is meant to be disruptive. That is its whole role. And even though we are in what is being regarded as pretty tough times, a lot of turmoil, this is when it's so important for artists to create. This is where it matters the most. Get out there and bloody do something. Show it.
I think one of the most useful art forms right now is actually the classic newspaper sketch cartoonist doing the political satire cartoon, the Babylon Bee.
Your Mark Knights and all that.
Your Mark Knight and then your more memeified versions, your Babylon Bees. These guys are communicating and doing social commentary and mockery in a very consumable format. Yeah. That I think that's one of the most important art forms right now. But I think it was an episode of Columbo. You remember the old detective show? I loved Columbo. I think it was an episode of Columbo where he ends up in a modern art museum, modern for their time, of course, and he's walking through, oh, what's this one? Oh, what's this one? He's getting all the arty-farty answers. He goes, oh, what's this one? And they say, that's the air conditioning vent, sir. It sat perfectly well alongside all of the other alleged artwork.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I think we talked about this a couple episodes ago. We were talking about your masters, your Da Vinci's, your Michelangelos and things like that. Yeah. And what people fail to recognize is that is all they lived and breathed. Yeah. And obviously they took on commissions to make money, but it's like all the stuff they were doing that they're working out. So you can go to a lot of the Italian or French museums now and you can see their journals. That to me is way more interesting than Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Just seeing how they got so good.
The Mona Lisa was considered unremarkable until I think it was only about 110 years ago when it was stolen.
Yes.
It was only when it was stolen that it suddenly became, the the Mona Lisa.
Yeah, it's like the Banksy artwork that was being
The one that got
sold and then it got
shredded.
shredded.
Yeah.
Now it went up
became
in
worth
like
more.
Yeah. That's the thing about art that people don't realize. So
it's the provenance is the wanky term for it, but it's actually it's just the story.
Yeah,
the story. That
but
goes
all
with
these languid idiots who are out there just
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Oh, you beat me to the punch. I'd forgotten about it completely. If I'm honest, you beat me to the punch. Well done.
Waiting for enough time to go. Like, woo.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, so if you guys have learned anything from this 1 hour of podcast, is anything that you're actually passionate about?
An hour and 23 minutes, thank you.
I think this has been really beneficial.
It's been cathartic and I've had fun.
Yeah, but I think one thing I've recognized from our side of the fence is that not only are people complacent, but God, people just want to whinge. And I get it, whinging does feel cathartic, but you do actually have to take action.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to learn a skill. And I know we talked about this on a live and she was like, that was a really good episode where you talked about this. If we can encourage you guys to do anything, aside from, devouring the news and being very, down the rabbit hole, pick something and get good at it.
And in particular, pick something that is going to be valuable in the eyes of others.
Yeah. Find a way to service people, right? Something simple. Like it could be something as simple as learning a skill, like just I'm just trying to think of something off the top of my head, like gardening stuff, right? Yep. How many people now, obviously they're lacking time, they can't be bothered, all those things. So they outsource it to some local handyman to come around. Actually, this is what I wanted to bring up. Do you ever watch South Park?
I have done. I haven't watched it in ages.
With it?
Yeah.
I didn't realize it's still going.
Yeah, right.
Like it's like
Trey
Simpsons.
Parker and Matt Stone, I think it is. Yeah.
And it's the same thing. It's just satire.
Yeah.
And we watched an episode called Pandaverse. It was like a mini movie.
Right.
And Pandaverse is basically about the pandering to work stuff. Right?
Is this like the smug problem they had when everyone started buying Priuses?
Yeah.
The smog was gone, but it had been replaced by smug.
Yeah. And so it was really interesting. I think I might be conflating two episodes here, but because we watched two back to back. But anyway, it's basically about how everyone was being replaced by like diversity hires.
Yeah.
So Cartman becomes a black woman, and it's like three universes all going at the same time. And basically what they were talking about was like, so Stan's dad is trying to teach the kids, like Stan and the sister, how to do things around the house because they realize that Gen Z can't do anything.
Right.
And he's like, all right, so the oven door's broken. So this is how we fix it. And he gets on the phone and he's like, hi, handyman, I need you to come around. And then what happens is, because everyone's like an accountant and a cushy, white shirt class laptop worker, all of a sudden there's a skill shortage. So the handyman become millionaires.
Yes.
And so they're driving around.
Which is how it should be.
They're driving around in Maybachs.
Yeah.
And and so Stan's like, come and fix my oven. He's like, sorry, mate. Like, old mate's offered me $1,000. And he's like, well, I'll offer you $2,000. And they, become speeding and whatever. And so it gets to the point where they've got like gold chains and Rolexes.
They're the gangster rappers, And
I was like, oh my God. So I think that came out 2023. And that's exactly what I'm pointing out. Do you know how few people know how to do something as simple as change a tire? I'm not even joking. I know that's such a simple example. Yeah. And I know a lot of people have run flats now, but like just simple things like that people have forgotten how to do. Yeah. Gardening's a big one. So, our front garden, it's got a lot of stones down, and G and I have this like weed problem. We have tried so many weed killers and it doesn't kill them. In the end, we ended up getting like, I'm really sorry guys, we had to get like the serious glyphosate, like the stuff that you don't want touching your skin. Yeah. It was the only thing that took them down. Yeah. And I was like, bloody hell. And
that's okay. It's not like you live near the bay or any waterways or anything like that. I mean, it's,
because we got told off by the body corporate for the state. They're like, you need to get those under control.
Yeah, probably once the baboons were swinging through the weeds, that might have been a bit of a giveaway.
Well, no. So what they've done, the previous owners, I think this house has had two owners, and before this is like wetlands. So there would have been like native plants. And obviously there's a lot of birds. So the birds are always dropping seeds. So random things are growing everywhere. Yeah. But what was here before was some kind of shrub. And they've not pulled it out. Right. They've just chucked stones down.
Yeah, they just suppressed it and it looked good. Yeah.
So it's not actual weeds. It's like this shrub tree thing that just keeps coming back. Yeah. And they're like thick stemmed.
Yeah. And if they've slashed it, then all that root system is still there. And so what grows back is going to be quite hardy.
Yeah, and it is. And it's to the point where Jane like, oh my God, we don't know how to get rid of these. And we hired this like little Vietnamese man. Yeah. And because we saw him work, so our landlord sent him over first. And then he did such a good job. We were like, hey, mate, come back. And he was like doing stuff. And I was like, fuck, what a good business. Yeah. He's doing work that me and G were like, firstly, like, not that we didn't know. It was just we hadn't done it before.
Yeah.
But he was so efficient and proficient, made good money, and he's busy.
Yeah, he's working flat out.
Yeah, but most people don't want to do that anymore.
All the gardeners that I know of are very, very busy. But can I go back to South Park? Can I share with you my all-time greatest South Park moment?
Sure.
This is one for the ages. I'm going to describe it, so even people listening, you don't have to see anything. You'll be able to see it in your mind if you just switch your mind into South Park animation mode. All right. The episode is about the flag of South Park and the fact that it's racist because it shows 4 white people hanging a black dude. And so this
is that the flag?
That's the flag. That's the South Park flag. And so there's this big uproar because it's a racist flag. And on the one hand, you've got Chef, the black dude, who has the word chef on his chest, right? And he's campaigning, this is racist and it needs to change. And then on the other side, you've got the Ku Klux Klan going, but it's part of history. We can't change our history. We need to celebrate our history, blah, blah, blah. And then Chef goes and he converts to Islam and he changes his name. And now his name is like, it's massively long. It doesn't fit on his chest anymore. So he hires 2 people to hold signs. And every time he turns, they have to run and reposition themselves into the right position. What happens is the city leaders don't want to touch it. It's too toxic of a debate. So what they do is they say, listen, we're going to have the school kids have a debate in school, and whoever wins the debate, that's what decides what we do with the flag, which is like great social commentary. Like, let's just not make a decision and push it on to somebody else. So then all the groups converge out the front of the school. You've got you've got Chef and all the people, this is racism, blah, blah, blah. On one side, you've got the Ku Klux Klan and a bunch of others on the other side. And there's this big kind of fight happening while they await the children to come out with the decision about what they're going to do with their flag. And then there's this moment where Chef steps forward. And it does that classic sort of super close up on his face. And he says, in Tibet, in protest over the treatment of his people, a Tibetan monk doused himself in petrol and set himself on fire. Now, here in South Park, I will do the same. And then it crash zooms out and there's a Tibetan monk next to him and he douses the Tibetan monk in petrol and lights him on fire. And it's just got that animation style. It's like, South Park. I lost it. I absolutely, it is so wrong. And I completely lost because that's exactly, like the social commentary there is brilliant.
Yeah.
Hurting other people in the name of virtue.
Yeah.
It's there's so many layers
I'd
to it.
forgotten
It's so
how
perfect.
good South Park is because it's on Paramount. And it's yet another subscription. I now have most of them. And we were watching it. I was like, bloody hell, this is good social commentary.
Yeah, their ability to slice an issue so precisely that it pisses everybody off, and yet it is spot on.
We watched another episode. It was called Cred. And Cred was like a discussion around basically prime drinks, the Logan Paul stuff.
Yeah.
And so the whole episode was around the kids losing their mind over Cred. And you're going to have Cred. And then there's fake Cred. And you can buy Cred on the sorry, that's how they say it. You're going to buy Cred on the black market and stuff. And then it was also a discussion around OnlyFans. So Stan's dad starts an OnlyFans. He's just walking around with his junk out and he's trying to make money. And then the mum does it and she makes way more money. And I was like, it was anyway.
That's so good. All right, I think I'm going to do a retrospective tangent time. We've just finished a tangent time.
Yeah, excellent. No, hang on, I've got to put it again. I've got timestamps. So I do actually have a lot to talk about, but we've actually weirdly, we always do this. We somehow get into things.
Yeah, we touch on the subject.
So we will get to Epstein. I know everyone's talking about it, but I do want to just come back to the whole, just to round out what we've been talking about. How I was talking about how beauty's making a comeback?
Yes.
So Sydney Watson did that thing up. So I'm just going to pull this up.
That was an hour and like 15 minutes ago we first touched on that.
But I think this is actually worth a discussion. So do you know who this is? This is Lizzo.
Okay. She's lost weight.
She's lost a ton of weight.
Yeah.
She has now admitted that she did Ozempic. She used Ozempic.
Yep. Okay.
Which, to be honest, good on her.
Yeah,
I'm so pro Ozempic. If that's what you need, if that helps you, great.
Yeah.
You know what? At the end of the day, people are like, oh, Ozempic's bad for you. Maybe it is, but you know what else is bad for you? Like morbid obesity.
Yeah, if Lizzo didn't do something, she was going to die very young.
Yeah.
And the damage may already be done. Her lifespan may already have been shortened, but hopefully
I didn't know how young she was. She's only 37. She's she's younger than me.
Yeah.
And to be that overweight.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, your Oprahs, your Lizzos, we went through this whole body positivity movement where everyone was embracing. They were trying to make us be happy with with fat.
Yeah, and it was the uglification. It's exactly the expression you used.
And what you realise is someone like Lizzo, who built a lot of her brand around being, her name was Lizzo Be Eating on Instagram. That's her Instagram handle. And just embroidered.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Lizzo Be Eating.
Oh, no.
And so it's almost like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. She knew she was overweight. She knew she'd be mocked for it. So she lent into it so she could own it so she couldn't get attacked. And so what it is like building a cocoon around yourself. But what you're actually doing, maybe you're building a cocoon around yourself and you're owning it so you don't get attacked.
Yeah.
But you're only hurting yourself.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, the only one that gets punished by being morbidly obese is yourself.
Who was the comedian? It wasn't Matt Rife, although it is the kind of thing he would say. It was a different comedian. I can see his face, who said, if Lizzo's so beautiful, how come women get mad when I say they look like her?
Yes. I
Right.
do remember that.
That is perfect.
Yeah. It's so
That is
true.
perfect.
So I thought this was interesting, and I know we've brought this guy up a lot. You know how I talked about, firstly, Demi Lovato going from being the they, them, non-binary to now
coming
she's
back.
a woman, getting
Yep.
married,
Yep.
very feminine. You might be familiar with who this gentleman is.
Is that Sam Smith's current look?
That is a picture posted a week ago.
Interesting.
And if we look at his Instagram,
So we're looking at Sam Smith for those that are listening.
yeah, Sam Smith,
And he's actually starting to look like he might be male again.
he looks male, and there is no past evidence. Now, they've scrubbed, and I know
Wow.
why they're scrubbing. He's obviously got an album coming out.
Yeah,
This is some kind of promotion. But isn't it incredibly interesting?
Yeah.
Like, because I've got it here. Do we remember?
Oh, I don't want to see it again. Gosh.
We have to.
Yeah.
This is Sam Smith wearing his blow-up latex outfit at the 2023 Brit Awards.
Yeah, and there was that whole Body Shop song and all of that imagery
Yeah.
around that, and just
And,
awful.
The thing, and I know I've said this about
And he's
Sam
got a
Smith
beautiful
before,
voice. Like,
he's so
what a
freaking
talent.
talented.
What a talent.
He's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
I love Sam Smith's songs before that last album.
Yeah.
I still listen to him. He's a crooner, and he obviously got people talk about conspiracies. There's
Yeah.
humiliation rituals. I honestly, that gives it a lot of breath because I'm sitting there going,
Yeah, and it's so consistent. It's so consistent with artist after artist going through that. But coming back to your the return of beauty, I think Lauren Southern's onto something with that. I mean, it's something that a lot of people have recognised. But just recently, a video went viral of a bunch of young kids. I'm going to say the youngest of them was probably only 5 or 6, and the oldest would have been the vocalist would have been a bit older in her early teens. And the rest were in the mix there. 2 on keyboards, 1 on bass, 1 on guitar, 1 on drums, and a vocalist. And I might have missed something in there as well. Just playing a classic old
I saw
song.
this. Yeah, they were playing. I was going to say the Doobie Brothers. It wasn't the Doobie Brothers. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was really interesting to observe my own psychological reaction as I watched it, because I watched it, I started, I'm like, man, for their age, these people are good. Like, these are good musicians, especially they're good musicians, full stop.
Yeah.
But for their age, this is amazing. But I realized that my internal clock was ticking. I'm like, when's it going to kick in? Because my assumption was that they weren't just going to play the original and appreciate it for what it was. It had to. They were going to kick into a hard rock version, or they were going to they would have reworked it in some way. And actually, they just played this thing through, and they did a beautiful job of it.
It was, what was it? Kids
I don't
playing
remember.
a vintage rock song
And it's just
that went
good.
viral.
And
last week.
they just let it be what it was.
Yeah.
And they kind of honoured it by just letting it be what it was.
Well, I think what you're realizing now is a lot, and we've talked about this before, modernity has killed a lot of creativity.
Yeah.
In the movie franchises, in music, and it was...
Ironically, it's killed a lot of diversity.
Yeah.
In those spaces.
I think it was this one, the Louisville Leopard percussionist. Let's have a look, see if I can find it. But yeah, so what frustrates me is that people just haven't been excited enough to go out and do things. So is this the kids that were doing Crazy Train? No. They're in a house, weren't they?
Yeah, they're just in the lounge room. And someone made the point, they're not in the garage. They've been invited into the middle of the house. They've taken over the house. These are kids that obviously play their musical instruments a lot.
Yeah.
They're obviously supported in doing that. It's not, go out to the garage, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, let's bring you in. You can be in the house and make your noise here. And they've been introduced to classics, and they're embracing them.
Yeah.
They're not playing Taylor Swift. No offense. I think Taylor's done some great
And they're
music.
not bastardizing it. They're not sampling.
Correct.
And
They actually just played it and enjoyed it for what it was.
Might be this one. Let's have a look.
Oh, actually, even if you find it, we can't play it because you'll get done for copyright.
Oh, yeah.
So I think we need to just move on from that one.
Oh, sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love little things like that. And I also love people just becoming truly exceptional, which is why, like, it doesn't matter what sector they're in. If they're successful, I'm just like, yes.
And this trend is also, we've talked about this before, people are getting interested in crocheting, in preserving food, in gardening and growing, in repairing things, in doing fabrication.
I think I've talked about crochet. It's one of those things. I'm not doing it. I definitely won't be doing it to make money because it takes too long.
Oh, it's so time
It
consuming.
is one of those things where it's a bit dorky, whatever. I've made 6 blankets now. I've made a couple for friends. I've got a couple for myself. That's it. It's just literally nothing more. Nothing more, just something to keep me busy. I enjoy it. I don't need to make a big song and dance about it. And I get to enjoy the fruits of that labor for years.
Yeah. Yep, and I want my son to grow up with some understanding of sort of basic fabrication, which means I need to actually start to bring that back into my life so that I can model that for him.
Well, maybe you can teach me and Winston, because I said to G's amazing at metalwork. Obviously, that's what he does.
Yeah.
And he's always like, we can make it out of aluminium. And I'm like, well, can we do it out of wood? He's like, well, I don't really know wood. I'm like, I would like to learn joinery, because I watch so many people just like all of a sudden walk into their bathroom and be like, that's it. We're renovating the bathroom today. And they start pulling it apart and doing everything. I'm like, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah, and good joinery, good woodwork is so beautiful, and I love the smell, and I love the texture and all
the
of
idea.
that.
So there's this girl I'm following on Instagram. Actually, I pulled it up. I don't know if you've seen this. Her name is Barefoot Wanderer. So I'm just going to grab it for us.
No.
So she is this young girl. She's got a property somewhere, and she is building a shipping container house.
Oh yeah.
On her own. And she, again, same thing again, right? So I'm going to pull her up. Hang on, here we go. So this is her, 1.2 million followers. She didn't start with that. She's amassed this following by showcasing everything that she's done.
By wearing low-cut tops. Yep, got it.
Well, I mean, there's part of that. She has built this from scratch. I dare say she's had a little bit of help along the way.
Sure.
But so she started with building the foundations herself. So she poured everything into drums, concrete, and she showed everything. She got these shipping containers dropped off. I'm trying to scroll down to some of these. But so these are her foundations. So
right. Yep. So piers.
Yep. And like, again, I wouldn't even know where to start. And she doesn't either. And she says that.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm just learning as I go. I've never done this. And she's doing everything, jackhammers.
Goodness. Yeah, okay, good on her.
You know, and so she showcased all this. I have no idea what this is. I'm going to say it's up north somewhere in like the Byron area. Just feel like that's the vibe. But
it is a Byron vibe. You're right.
It is. And like, you know, she just shows everything. So, you know, her containers, and she's joining them up.
Yeah.
Like,
good on her. Like,
it's amazing.
That is amazing.
And whether or not her work's good or not is irrelevant.
Yeah.
This is stuff that she's learnt to do herself.
Yeah.
And I've talked about Matt Armstrong before. Again, he's not a mechanic. He's taught himself. Yeah. So there's opportunity for everyone.
Yeah, and for me, I want to assemble a kit car with my son when he's a teenager. And part of that is to force myself to get back on the tools, because I did a pre-apprenticeship in carpentry and joinery. I've done basically none of that ever since. I don't know metal fabrication pretty much at all. I've had next to nothing to do with that. I've drilled holes in metal a few times. That's literally about as far as it goes.
Welding is an art.
Welding is like good quality. I can appreciate good quality welding. I can spot the difference, but I've never touched a welder in my life.
G is meticulous with his welding.
I can imagine.
Yeah. He's one of those people. It's actually so funny. I think we talked about this before, but like, he is very much the engineer brain, and I am very much the creative brain. And it is so clear that they do not communicate well.
Opposites attract.
Yeah, it's just funny because I watch him do his thing, and I'm like, my brain just doesn't work that way, man.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And likewise.
Designed for different things.
Which is why, again, there's opportunity for everyone. Yeah. But moving on.
Yes.
There is some actual good news.
Okay.
About news.
Good news news.
We've talked about the fuck around, find out era.
Yes.
And I just want to showcase a couple of people that have been found out recently.
Newsflash for those who don't know, we are out of the fuck around era and deep into the find out
We
era.
are in the find out era. Yes. So when I say it's good news, I'm not saying the story itself or, you know, people getting fired is good news. What I mean is common sense seems to be making a resurgence.
Oh, yes.
And that warms my heart. Mm-hmm. So this happened in Melbourne, and you and I sort of stay away from the Palestine talks because it's just it's very fatiguing. But this woman here, I believe she works in healthcare, and she has been sacked. So she was part of the mob that basically went and terrorized a restaurant 2 weekends
Is
ago.
that what Ms. Non is? I don't actually know what Ms. Non is.
Yeah,
Is that the name of the restaurant?
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
name of the restaurant.
Right.
So a prominent anti-Israel activist has been stood down from her St. Vincent's Hospital job after being caught flipping off terrified staff and patrons amid a violent ambush at Melbourne's Ms. Non restaurant.
Yeah, amazing. So this is freedom of association. I'm not someone who generally advocates for getting people fired, etc. But freedom of association is a human right. It is every bit as fundamental as freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of religion, freedom of freedom of association. The right to choose where you work, but also the right for every employer to choose who they employ. That's fundamental. People talk about these artists who got cancelled at the Glastonbury Festival for their chants, that sort of thing. This isn't fair. This is an infringement on their freedom of speech. No. No one's taking away their right to say that. The BBC is saying you don't get to use our platform to say that. That's a different thing. Now, the BBC being government funded does that. There are some issues there. But as soon as it's a purely private relationship, and again, I mean, St. Vincent's, well, that's partly government funded. That gets a lot of government money. There's some issues there. In a perfect world, that wouldn't happen. It'd all be private. But when it comes to private relationships, I can choose to disassociate from you, and that includes firing you if you're out there publicly doing something which I go, no, I don't want to be associated with you
I find it
anymore.
really interesting because these people were the ones championing cancel culture during the COVID years.
Yeah.
And now they're on the receiving end because the pendulum has shifted and now they're like, this is not fair.
Yeah.
I just reported 2 of my tattle trolls to APRA.
Okay.
And I don't take that decision lightly.
Sure.
But this is a prolific, sustained campaign of harassment
Yeah.
and defamation, basically, to the point where I've been doxxed online, my addresses has been revealed, they have driven past my house, all sorts of things. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm collating an extensive document where I've got all of this and it's going to stop. And if that results in losing your job, well, fuck around, find out.
For those that don't know, her address, if you want to send a bucket of poop to her, is I believe it's number 1 Spring Street, Melbourne 3000. I think
It's a really big,
really big
colonial
building.
looking building.
Yeah, I think you
Some
can
big
just
steps
send
out
it
the
there.
front.
Send it there.
Yeah.
It'll find its way to her.
It will. So, and this is the thing. It's really interesting because I don't think there's anything wrong with having conversations and critiquing people.
Correct.
We're all very judgmental creatures.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. But when it crosses over into it's sustained over a long period of time where you become infatuated.
It's a campaign.
It's stalking.
It's a what do they call it? It's a fixation.
It is. And unfortunately, I hate throwing my sex under the bus, but women are really good at it. They just become so fixated on it.
Not to be sexist, but you girls are fucked up.
Yeah, man. I say this wholeheartedly. There is no one more vicious than a woman. But
Particularly against another woman.
and interestingly,
that's the thing.
these 3 examples I'm giving are all women. So there you go. So
There you
here's
go.
another example. So obviously the Texas flood, we haven't talked about that.
Yeah.
I don't weigh into natural disasters. It's an active thing.
Well,
It's
horrific
terrifying.
situation. Globally, floods are going to be really bad for the next few years. Anyone that's been following my interviews with David Burton, aka Inigo Jones, will be aware of that. It's not going to happen absolutely everywhere, but it's certainly going to happen in the southeast of Australia and up along the east coast. It's already started, and it's going to get worse over the next 4 years. But globally as well, this is a really bad couple of years for floods.
Yeah. Not commenting on the natural disaster itself, but this is a pediatrician, and she was saying that the Texas flooding victims got what they deserved or got what they voted for, and she's been fired after mocking the Texas flooding, where more than 80 people at the time of this post had lost their lives. And she wrote something like, "May all visitors, children, non-MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry. Kerr Country MAGA voted to gut FEMA. They deny climate change. May they get what they voted for. Bless their hearts." That is a cold-hearted, callous thing to say.
But also the absolutism, this assumption that FEMA is a good thing. Well, actually, we've seen time and time again that FEMA hasn't been, and that in fact they often get in the way of locally led efforts to actually bring genuine relief. We saw this after the cyclone, where actual government-led efforts and FEMA were confiscating and obstructing the efforts of genuine locals who were competent. It's not like they were putting themselves in danger, but they were getting busy and they were getting in and doing things, and FEMA became the obstruction.
Yes.
Cast your mind back to when we had the Black Saturday fires here in Victoria, and there was the amazing outpouring of funding and support, people donating clothing and all the rest of it. That literally, like the charities were drowning in clothing. It actually became a problem. But literally hundreds of millions of dollars were donated, and then the government stepped in and said, yoink, we'll have that, and we'll be the ones who decide where that goes. Thank you very much. The vast majority of that money was never handed out.
Yeah.
The vast majority of that money did not do anything, much less help the victims.
Yeah.
It did nothing. And this is the problem. So the presumption in this lady's worldview is that the government were going to be part of the solution here, and that's simply not the case.
The issue is as well, like, look, I'm not a first responder, but this is just my assertion with what I've witnessed with many of these things, is that it takes so long for someone to make the decision on how it's going to be dealt with, by which point things have already burnt down, people have already died.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that with Black Saturday and people getting so angry that people perished in that because it was too late and whatnot. There are things like, I'm not saying it's by the book, but if you can do something, it's better to let people try than go, hang on, we need to wait. It's not protocol.
And this is central planning versus decentralized planning, subsidiarity in real time, in real life. I mean, Black Saturday is a great example because Christine Nixon, the then disaster I think she was the police commissioner and she was in charge of disaster response at the time. She went to lunch. Yeah. You know, and she had other priorities on that day. Now, you know, there's detail around that. I'm not going to go into that, but fundamentally, centralizing command and control into a single place for the entire state was not the answer. That is very, very evident. Yeah. Now, would people have died regardless? Absolutely. Yeah. Tragically, when you've got those sorts of temperatures and those sorts of wind speeds, we can't monitor, and you simply cannot get the word out fast enough for everyone to get out of harm's way. So I'm not suggesting that it would have been night and day. You know, no one would have died.
But one extra life saved, I think would be worth it.
Well, without resorting to the if it just saves one life argument, more to the point, the idea that it's okay, someone's looking after that, the government's got this, is a really dangerous mentality.
Well, again, it makes people complacent.
Correct.
You know, it's the same thing. I mean, we've talked about this when it came to the fire services levy, where the inner city is like, oh, it should just be like this. I'm like, hang a minute, but you're not the person that's going to be on the receiving end should this go wrong. Yeah. You know, it's all well and good for you in your apartment blocks, but when you live rurally and these things are real things that you face. I remember I was living down Torquay Way. And you know, obviously between Lorne and Torquay, there's the Otways National Park. Yep. And there's that is just begging to go up. It's gone up at times, Wye River and things like that, Kennet River. But I remember when just the recent fires went, so Black Saturday, we had a...
You say recent, that's 13, 14 years ago now.
What was the one that was 2020?
Oh, okay, that wasn't Black Saturday. So Black Saturday was...
that's the one.
It was 2011. 174 people killed.
What's
the recent ones? They were much more widespread. So that was December 2019, January 2020. Yeah.
Mixing them up.
Yep.
I've been alive for both of those, obviously. Where was I going? Oh, yeah. So we were down that way and we were having conversations like what to do if the fire comes. Because if it does pick up, it's a hop, skip and a jump before it just burns through. So, you know, you got Surf Coast Highway, Torquay's on the coast, but in between you've got Armstrong Creek and a whole bunch of like rural properties and there's a whole lot of dense bush area. Yeah. I think a lot of that now is being cleared because they've just putting new bloody housing estates up everywhere. But when I moved down there, it was still relatively a new area. And yeah, it was discussions like fill up the bath and do all this other stuff. And I was like, wow, I hadn't even thought about this before because I'd always lived in Bayside. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just a different way of thinking about things. And until you're in that situation, you're not thinking about these things.
And it's really important that people who are in that situation do think about it, which is the perverse outcome of saying, oh, the government's got this. The government's got all their disaster plans in place. No. You need to think about you.
And so another contrast, another person who has found out, I actually really don't want to play this. She's so fucking nasty, but I'll just play. Oh, yeah, I'll play a little bit of it. Let's see.
That we don't want the girls to be found, whatever girls that are missing or whatever right now. But you best believe, especially in today's political climate, if this were a group of Hispanic girls, especially with them being in East Texas, it should be most likely Hispanic. If this were a group of Hispanic girls out there, this would not be getting this type of coverage that they're getting. No one would give a fuck. And all these white people, the parents of these little girls, would be saying things like they need to be deported, they shouldn't have been here in the first place, and yada, yada, yada. So before y'all come at me, before y'all start leaving hate comments on my page about, oh, these are just kids and they don't know no better, the parents of these children who are choosing, and it is a choice in 2025, it is definitely a freaking choice to go into East goddamn Texas and to make a all-white enclave exclusionary just for white people, with all the black people in East Texas, with all the Hispanic people in East Texas. Somehow, some way, you have carved out an all-white...
The first part's worse. Hang on.
So I'm confused. I didn't know that it was an intentionally all white thing. Is that?
No, it's not. Shit's how shit. So this is the
I
frigid
know I'm
floods.
probably going to get canceled for this, but Camp Mystic is a whites-only girls' Christian camp. They don't even have a token Asian. They don't have a token.
So she's made it about race. She's basically saying that, and she calls them, sorry, I'm going to swear really grossly down here.
Calling them out on the racism and telling
She
them.
called them little white cunts, the kids.
Yeah, wow. Charming.
Consequences for what? Maybe it was God's will to wash them little cunts away. That's what she's wrote.
So it seems as though she's inferring that it's whites only by the fact that it was mostly, that it was white girls
kids
in that particular group. So look, I can't comment. I don't know if there is. I mean, there are places and there are people that are genuinely racist. Is that one of them? I've no idea.
Yeah.
But also to imply that no one would care or they wouldn't care as much if it were people of a different race flies in the face of actually US history and the south of the US. So go back to the down south there had a huge hurricane. Katrina. Was that Oklahoma?
It's
New
New
Orleans. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's the bombing. I went Timothy McVeigh for some reason. No, go back to New Orleans. Now, my brother was actually there as part of the cleanup after that. Long story. But the photos that came out of that showed people of all colours going in and rescuing and helping and supporting people of all colours. There were black people helping white people. There were white people helping black people. There were photographs of more elderly black people being carried through floodwaters by white people and so on. America has shown time and time again that actually when the chips are down, much like in Australia when the Black Saturday fires happened, we just get around each other and we support. This is really disgusting to me. Now, I don't know if there's any truth at all to whether this is some sort of an exclusive enclave, but to turn around now with a bunch of dead kids and to try and make it about her race and make it about her, I'm probably going to get cancelled for this. It's a very look at me kind of. Did she? Yeah. It's a very look at me kind of approach.
I just think this is such really retarded, and I'm going to use the word retarded because it is. It's retarded thinking. Like everything is just.
It's all right. Donald Trump was elected. We can use it again. Yeah.
Everything's just been reduced down to it's race this, race that. Get over it. Sorry, grow the fuck up. Bad things have happened in our history. Understand.
Yep.
Get it. But move on.
Yep.
Literally move on. This is holding us. Yes.
Can I have that carafe of water, please?
This is holding all of us back. And like the longer this shit goes on, that Jacinta Allen wanting to bring the voice in and all that, the longer you keep this charade up, the worse it gets for everyone. And I mean, this is a very simple statement. I'm a white person, of course. I'm not allowed to have this comment. But at what point will you be satiated? Okay, let's say you get your reparations, everything's like erased. Then you get to dominate for the next 300 years. Will that be enough? Will that be sufficient? Is the playing field even then?
Can I bring up some?
What the?
Sorry, I didn't want to have you over exercise your bladder as well.
That sound is not helping me.
I am wetting my pants right now, not from the inside, but with this bottle. Look at this. This bottle's useless.
Why is it leaking?
I have a wet patch in my crotch, and not for the right reasons. Moving on. So we just saw, just in this last week actually, the Victorian Environment Minister came out and said that they're not going to proceed with the Great Forest National Park, which is wonderful news. Very, very briefly, they were going to take a bunch of state parks plus a bunch of stuff that's just land and turn it into a national park. And a national park would have meant that a lot fewer activities would have been allowed, a lot less access for four-wheel drivers, for hunting, for a bunch of activities. And so essentially locking the land away in true kind of, what do they call it? The Agenda 2030 kind of plan. And that's been knocked on the head, which is great news. And it surprised me. And I found myself going, why has this happened? Because this was a very well-funded campaign.
Yep.
They had a slick website. They had all the support from all the right groups. They had Jane Goodall had thrown her support in. Sir David Attenborough was quoted on the website supporting the project. Like they had money and they'd put together this enormous campaign. They had celebrity endorsements. They paid Redbridge, the left-wing polling, to go and run a very, very, I could rip this apart in a video if I wanted to. I don't know if I can be bothered, but a really, really cynical poll that gave them the answer they wanted. 80% of Victorians support the Great Forest National Park. 90% of Victorians have never heard of it until they saw the poll. But
I literally have never heard of it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it seems to tick all the boxes for the Labor Party. I'm like, why wouldn't they say yes to this? Why would they have said no to this national park? And I interviewed David Limbrick, MP, Victorian Member of Parliament, about it. And that interview's on my YouTube channel right now. And he said, and I'm embarrassed to say I hadn't actually spotted this as a possibility yet because it's the kind of thing I should have seen. Excuse me. But he said, well, with the treaty negotiations coming up, they don't want what's possible on that land to be restricted by the federal government. They want to be able to hand that over in full with all of the access rights, etc., as part of their negotiations with Indigenous corporations for treaty. And I thought, oh, that's a real out of the frying pan into the fire kind of a situation, isn't it? You know, we celebrate the fact that it's not being turned into a national park, but find that within the next 18 months to 2 years or so, a lot of this land may have actually just been handed over. And now there's no access at all.
Yeah.
For us.
That's happening a lot in WA. I'm not really across this. I've only seen like headlines, if I'm honest, but talking about repealing land access. I know they've been doing it up in Cape York. A lot of the big famous four-wheel drive tracks have been closed down.
A lot of rock climbing areas all over Australia.
You can't do camping.
Yep.
And this is just absolutely out of control.
And at some point, I mean, this comes back to the thesis of my book. Yes, I'm going to push my stuff. Good people break bad laws. The thesis of that book is the government keeps increasing its power until the people say no.
Yeah.
The limit of the government's power is defined by the limit of the people's obedience. It's the point when we go, nah, we're done.
Yeah.
You've had your day. Now we're saying no.
Isn't it interesting though? Because I'm going to bring up a topic that you and I sort of were avoiding, but I think it's too big a story for us not to cover it now.
Sure.
But it's the things that you think would get people up in arms, right? Like, you know, the forcing of vaccines or, you know, locking us in our homes. Like everyone seemed to cop that. But it was the playgrounds, the closing of the playgrounds that ticked people over the edge.
Yep.
You know, now it's going to be you can't access your favourite campground that you've been going to like for generations.
Caravanning and forward
Caravaning,
driving and
that's like
that's
an Australian pastime.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well, do you know what? If that's what it needs to be, great.
Then good, yeah.
But I find it really interesting that's what it is. And so this is kind of segueing into the story. And I want to be careful with this story because it's just so disgusting. But I'm going to talk about the pedophile that was uncovered in the Melbourne childcare centres.
Yep.
And this story is like, are you familiar with this? You obviously.
I've avoided the details. This is one of those stories that I look at and go, it's already being thoroughly covered. There's not a lot of value that I can bring.
I would disagree with that because what this is, I've got a story here. This is obviously talking about Jacinta. This just shows what happens when you take your hand off the wheel. So basically, for those who don't know, to work in childcare, it's really easy. You just need a working with children's check. And that is basically just getting rubber stamped.
So I have worked with charities where everyone has to have those. And literally around the office, and I was in the head office of this is a major charity. If I mentioned it, every single person listening or watching would have heard of it before. In the office, they referred to it as a haven't been caught yet.
Yeah.
That's literally what they call it. It's not a working with children's check. It's a haven't been caught yet.
Yeah. And they don't run any checks. It's just literally like, hey, here's your paperwork. Great.
Yeah. Have you been convicted of anything yet? That's literally all it checks for. Yeah.
And so, and this frustrates me. So this heading, this is from The Guardian. Health Department regrets the language, man. I'm big on language, but regrets family affected by accused Melbourne childcare pedophile having to test children for STI twice. So what they're talking about is basically like a paperwork stuff up.
Yeah.
There was trouble with collating because this guy worked at like 20 clinics.
Yeah.
The list wasn't updated and then people didn't know and they had to go back. And so the whole thing, because it's been run by the state, has been mismanaged.
Yeah.
And further into the story, Jacinta Allen has has hired a Labor person to come in and lead the the commission that's going to look into it.
Yeah.
And then she's accused the Liberal Party of politicising the issue. So Brad Batten's come out saying, we're disappointed the government has appointed this Labor ally to review, describing it as an insider-led process designed to protect the government. But again, so now we've just got to and fro between the two political parties going, it's your fault, it's your fault. I'm sorry, can we just get back to the crux of the story? And I'm really sorry for all of you who are parents. I understand how grave this discussion is. This is a man who is 27, who is on 70 charges of child abuse. And I don't know if you know this, and it's so disgusting. I don't like saying it, but he put his ejaculation fluid into food and fed it to kids. He has got like children as young as 5 months. I don't even know. That's as much as I can stomach. this was allowed, and there were complaints. There is a paper trail of people going, I'm not sure about this guy.
Yep.
There was a story I read about a woman where this Joshua guy was coming after her, like basically saying, I want to babysit your kids.
Yeah.
And she thought that was a red flag. And so people had made complaints, and it just goes unchecked.
And this is, I think, the much bigger story is the fact that, and there are things that I'm aware of that aren't public, and I probably shouldn't and I can't say on this one. What I will say is I find it very interesting that all of a sudden we're having a conversation about how maybe looking after children is actually women's business after all.
Yeah. Isn't
it funny how suddenly that's turned, right? And I don't say that to be incendiary.
Yeah. It's interesting, the discussion now that men shouldn't be working in childcare centres. And I understand that's a knee-jerk reaction, but G and I were talking about this. He's like, oh, so it's always men's fault. I'm like, no. This is bigger than that. What this is basically a discussion about children should be mothered by their mothers.
Yes.
There's a issue that these children are being put into state care.
Yeah. So the number one person most likely to kill a child is actually their own mother, followed by a stepdad. Or like a male adult living in the home who isn't their biological father.
Yeah.
What I find really interesting, and I'm not seeing a lot of discussion about this, is if you look at the US statistics, where we have statistics, we have the data. I don't know if I can find it in Australia, and Australia being smaller, it might not be enough data to really draw any conclusions from. Men are enormously more likely to be in prison for child abuse than what women are, for sexual child abuse than what women are. It's not even close. It's a factor of 100 times or more likely to be convicted of sexual child abuse than what women are. Transgender women, so people born as men who then call themselves women later in life, are 5 times more likely again than men. So the single most likely variable in someone being a sexual child abuser, based on who is in prison for it in the US right now, and again, I'm very carefully not saying anything about the Australian situation, but people can infer whatever they want to. The single most significant variable is whether that person was born as a male and now considers themselves to be a female.
Yeah. I've been thinking about this. I don't have kids, obviously, but man, I want heads to roll. I just, was it 1,200 kids had to go and have an STI check for chlamydia and gonorrhea?
Yeah, because he was putting it in their food.
I just, I actually don't answer the question. I was going to say, didn't he do other things? I don't want to know.
No, yes, but the reason why it's just everyone, we just have to test everyone is.
So not only that, there's another one that's been uncovered that has links to this person, didn't work in childcare, but was known to this Joshua Brown. And then a third one who apparently is a public figure or known to the public, can't be identified.
Right.
So, they're a business person.
Right.
So a third person in relation to this kind of story.
Which, I'm sorry to be the bad guy, there is a place for that when it is still in the stage of only being an accusation.
Yeah.
Once they're convicted, I would fully expect them to be crucified publicly.
Yeah.
But yes, while it is...
Well, no, there's this discussion about how, when you're up in levels of power allow you to get away with things and not be named.
Yeah, well, I have a big issue with people who get convicted and then not named. It gets sealed. I have a big issue with that.
Yeah.
But the reality is and this is, we've talked about the other side of this before, where a man gets accused of, 20 years ago you inappropriately touched me at a club one time when we were both drunk.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they get dragged through the mud and their reputation gets destroyed for something that may or may not have even happened.
Well, this Joshua Brown one, the only reason the case was available to the public is because the children had to go get STI checks.
Yeah. Yeah, otherwise we wouldn't know his name.
Otherwise we wouldn't know his name, and we probably wouldn't even know about the story.
Yeah, and the whole thing would have been prosecuted, probably sealed.
Yeah.
He might have gone to prison for it, but we would never have found out.
And what's crazy is he's obviously going to be in segregation the rest of his life because he'll get murdered in prison.
He'll get murdered in prison, and there are people saying, "Hey, we should bring back the death penalty." I've got serious reservations about the death penalty and how it gets applied, and we need.
You know what I feel about the death penalty? It's a get a jail free card. I'm sorry.
In a way, it lets
I understand.
them off.
I know it's 20 years and there's lots of appeals. I get the system. I've read Dead Man Walking. Great book. Great movie. But the thing with the death penalty is that's it. It's so finite. That's it. You're dead. Bye. See you later.
Yeah.
I think having someone in prison for the rest of their life, and I bring up Naya Bukele. I'm just a big fan. But that person can still contribute in a way, whether they're working in the prison in some capacity. But imagine that for the rest, this kid's 27.
Yeah.
For the rest of your life, you will never see freedom.
Yeah.
That, to me, would be torture.
Okay,
Great.
but which is the greater deterrent?
Life in prison.
Life in prison or execution? Because part of the role of punishing crime is to deter others.
People. I think life in prison without parole, that's a pretty big deterrent. The death penalty, so this is the thing. The death penalty rarely gets applied. Rarely.
Yeah.
Like, for example,
However, we know for a fact that there are cases where it has been misapplied.
Yes, of course, that too. But the recent case in America, the Kamalo Anthony, did I get that wrong? The black kid who stabbed the track star.
Oh, you're right. Okay, we talked about that.
So the reason he didn't get the death penalty is because he pleaded guilty. No, sorry, there was some like they took it off the table for some reason.
Yeah, they'll often take it off the table in plea deals, which I have an issue with that anyway. But yes, it's often used as a bargaining chip.
Yeah, it's always over your head, but it can be waived and it can be used in plea deals and things like that. So this is the thing. I don't know. I'm probably not the right person to debate this, but my sentiment is no, fuck these people. Let them rot in prison. That's how I feel.
And I can understand that. I have some concerns. I mean, there are people that were convicted, executed, and then once DNA technology became available, we discovered they weren't at all the criminal. There are other people that we've used DNA to convict, and then we've discovered that the DNA was contaminated. And there's a whole program now in the US where forensic scientists are going back. It's called the Innocence Project, I think it is, if you want to look it up. And they're going back and actually essentially re-evaluating the evidence based on which people are doing life in prison or based on which people are on the on death row. And they're finding a disturbing number of cases. Where people have been wrongly
particularly
imprisoned.
Historical cases where things were unknown. I just watched the Zodiac on the weekend, which is about the Zodiac killer, and like they weren't able to pin him because there just wasn't enough proof. But it's pretty much likely that he was him.
Yeah, but this is why we have innocent until proven guilty. It is less bad to have a system that occasionally lets monsters get away with crimes than to have a system that occasionally puts innocent people into prison or gets them
But that's
executed.
why I would argue that I'm not. I understand why people want the death penalty, but I just feel like it's a get out of jail free.
Well, something like this, the case that we're talking about here, you would assume there would be a pretty overwhelming amount of evidence. And I've thought about this as a libertarian. Where do I stand on the death penalty? Is there a context for it? And I think for me, there would almost have to be another level of guilty. There's guilty beyond reasonable doubt, which a jury can find them, guilty beyond reasonable doubt. And then there is kind of another level, guilty beyond unreasonable doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, and heinous crimes where it would almost be the jury that has to come forward and say, okay, judge, we as the jury have determined that the death penalty should be on the table in this case. And then it's up to the judge to decide what the punishment in the end will actually be. But I wouldn't want it to be just a case of guilty beyond reasonable doubt, therefore the death penalty is on the table.
Well, we know that if he had a bit more money, he'd be able to walk away free, just a bit like Epstein, because he there was no client list.
Well, this is the problem. He did it privately rather than, if you're going to be a child abuser, you need to do it in the public sector.
Well, yeah,
where you get
need
protected.
to. 100%. You need to just have some politicians and some moguls on your side, and you get away.
Just make sure you do it with them, and then it's all good.
Do you know, not to blackpill everyone right now, but there's definitely moments where stories like this break. I followed the Diddy story really closely, and I kind of knew he was going to get off.
Yeah.
So of the 3 charges, he only was found guilty of 2 of the less serious ones, right?
Yeah.
And Diddy has got. There is so much circumstantial evidence that point to this guy being a really bad dude.
Yeah.
But because they don't have that bit of evidence.
It's the smoking gun issue. And honestly, it needs to be that way.
Yeah.
We cannot look at what we did to Lindsay Chamberlain.
Lindy.
Lindy, isn't it? Yeah. Look at what happens from time to time. I get it. It's horrible to live in a world where you know that some really nasty pieces of work have gotten away with being nasty pieces of work. Just trust that to God. They will face their judgment day in the end. But I don't want to live in a world where it's even easier than it already is to destroy people's lives with false accusations or wrong place, wrong time. I mean, you don't have to go back all that many decades, and people, particularly black people, were prone to getting hung for literally being new in town, and then something bad happens.
Yeah, and they just blame
and
them.
everyone just goes, new black dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they would die.
Yeah.
For the crime of being black and new in town when some horrible thing happened to someone.
Yeah, and that's the story of Dead Man Walking too.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I think also there's a place for the A Time to Kill. You familiar with that movie?
Yeah, it's a great movie.
There is a place for society where I mean, and this is going to fly in the face of what I just said, but I think there is a place for society to, at the very least, say, you're not welcome here anymore. You're going to travel to a different country and set up a new life here. This is what I think should be done, for example, to Daniel Andrews. It's like, well, regardless of whether we manage to get him criminally, and by the way, I have some news on that.
I've got it here.
Regardless of whether we get him on criminal charges, he should be made to feel so completely unwelcome that he goes and sets up a new life for himself in Beijing.
Yeah.
Right? There is a place for that, even where the legal system falls short.
I think he like, in a weird way, I know people won't feel this with Dan Andrews, his life is miserable. That guy can't go anywhere.
You know, he's trying to buy a golf course now because he's not welcome on any golf courses anymore. So he's got to get his
trying to
mates to buy one
facilitate
for
the
him.
buying. Through the Crown.
Yeah.
The thing with Daniel Andrews, and I know people won't be appeased by this, because this is the thing, the smellies, and we are the smellies, we want heads to roll.
Yeah.
We want justice to prevail. But as we know, money and power means that most people walk, particularly those who are the biggest monsters in society. You know, your Jeffrey Epsteins, your Diddys. But Daniel Andrews, he's of that ilk. I'm not saying he is a pedophile, but I mean, who knows? But, you know, Daniel Andrews is a piece of work. That's not the punishment that we want. It's not him in jail.
Yeah.
But imagine a world where you can't go anywhere. You can't go and get a coffee because you run the risk of random people coming up and just hurling abuse at you.
That is the world that Daniel Andrews should be living in right now.
I agree. And so in a weird way, it is punishment. He can't go to the golf courses where he can wine and dine and schmooze.
Well, you
He's
remember
not
when he went and did the speaking engagement in Box Hill to the Chinese community.
And he couldn't even come out.
And they had to, they literally just did racial profiling. Anyone who wasn't obviously visibly Chinese.
I don't think he actually spoke in the end, did he?
I thought he did. I thought that still happened, but they refused entry to anyone that wasn't visibly Chinese.
Yeah. Which is insane.
I mean, probably makes them, like, you could probably sue them on racial discrimination grounds and really give the organisers a hard time.
But this is what I mean. But this, in a weird way, Teflon Dan has now become radioactive man because
correct.
He's becomes a headache.
And this is really important. So I did a video a while ago on the fact that he is going to run out of friends over time.
Yeah.
The thing with having friends in high places is they retire, they pass away, they get replaced by somebody else, and over time your position gets weaker and weaker and weaker. What you depend on is that over time the rage also diminishes.
Yeah.
And it's our job to maintain that rage until eventually he doesn't have enough of these friends in high places anymore to protect him from the consequences of his actions.
But not only that, those friends in high places, it comes to a point where you have to make decisions that benefit firstly yourself and also your company's interests. And if it gets to a point where having Daniel Andrews around, it becomes more of a headache than it is helpful, then guess what? They're going to be like, look, mate, you can't come to this one.
Yeah, and if we can create a world where having him on the consortium trying to buy the golf course guarantees he will never get the golf course. Yeah. Right, guarantees that he can't, he becomes a problem for any deal you want to do, then that's really the world we want to create. But obviously you and I aren't at those tables, so we can't do that ourselves.
But I think it is happening in a way, and I get why people want him in jail. I understand that. I don't think it's likely, but since it is on the segment,
on that front,
I thought we would play this. This is the Bike Boy scandal, so I'll bring it up. There we go.
Horrible AI generated video, by the way.
Is it? I haven't watched the video.
It's horrible. I wouldn't even bother. Let me brief you. And my advice to them, if I ever get to talk to them, will be to get rid of that video and do a proper one.
Yeah. I know their PR team, so.
Okay. Yeah. No, do a proper video. That thing seems horrible. What they are doing is they are preparing, and they have the advice of Kel Glare, former Victoria Police Commissioner, and someone who has been good and on the issues around Daniel Andrews, is advising them. They are preparing a brief of evidence to hand over to the Victoria Police in order for them to prosecute Daniel Andrews criminally. Mm-hmm. And if they fail, if Victoria Police will not run the prosecution, then they will run a private prosecution themselves. Now, one of the biggest risks here, so a private criminal prosecution, it is a criminal prosecution. People can go to jail for it. It has all the same potential consequences. It's just not being run by the Department of Public Prosecutions. One of the things that we've forgotten today, and it's a super important thing that we need to remember, is that in a legitimate government, they only have the same power that we have. Mm-hmm. in a functioning government, in a functioning country, which we are not anymore, the right of a police officer to make an arrest stems from the right of any of us to make an arrest. The right of a police officer to carry a gun is supposed to stem from the right of every single one of us to carry a gun in the means of our own self-defense. The government, in a world where power is delegated to the government by the people, the government gets its power from the people. That means the government can only have power that the people have.
Yeah.
Now, we've lost that. We've forgotten that. But the ability to bring a criminal prosecution that carries potential criminal penalties is one that we all hold. That is not some unique government thing. The biggest risk to a prosecution like this is the Department of Public Prosecution stepping in and taking over the case because they are prone to doing that. And there are plenty of examples in the past where people have brought private criminal prosecutions against somebody. It looked like it might have got somewhere, and so the Department of Public Prosecution steps in, takes over the case and sabotages it and makes sure that it gets nowhere. I'm actually in conversation with some people right now. I'm trying to get an interview with the Mulliman family to get to the bottom of exactly what this story is, what their plans are, and what I want to hear is that they've got contingencies in place for if the Department of Public Prosecutions try and step in and sabotage.
Oh, I can put you in touch. I know the people running it, so that's easy. I think it's really interesting. But what I thought was interesting, GoFundMe's just like send daggers through my heart. But this is the GoFundMe, and there has been a lot of people, are invested in this.
How many days has that been up?
It's been up for a while now, but
isn't that more than what Pursuto was able to raise towards his legal troubles? I can't help but notice.
But you can look at the flurry of donations that have come through in the last couple of hours. People are buoyed at the idea that Andrew's, the sentiment is still there. People are very angry.
Oh, yeah.
And if this is how we can get him, then, look at this.
And I'm not saying this is how we will get him, but I think we should attempt every single thing because there's also...
It's just pressure.
Yeah, and there's a war of attrition.
Yeah.
We're tying up his resources, we're tying up his headspace, we are creating smoke around him that, to your point earlier, will cause some people to go, actually, you know what, you're more trouble than you're worth, we can't work with you anymore.
Yeah.
And over time, it's like an ablative...
Particularly sensitive investments and sensitive decisions.
Yeah. And we can just wear off that Teflon, right? And get to the point where we get through that.
I was looking at the top donations. Blair James, he is one half of Bondi Sands.
I don't know what
dude's
any
a
of that
legend.
means.
So Bondi Sands sold out recently last year, I think, for $500 million. It's a self-tanning company.
Yeah, right.
Two young boys from Australia, self-made millionaires, very, very wealthy now. But I see Blair getting behind a lot of grassroots campaigns like this. So when I see his name, I always get really bored.
Well, and that's a hell of a donation. So Blair, if you ever happen to see the podcast, well done, thank you.
Right. And not only that, hey, buy some merch now.
Well, while you're chucking $30,000 into the lawsuit, buy a hoodie.
But on the whole Epstein, people getting away with it, I'm going to bring up someone that you're going to be mad at me for bringing up.
Oh dear.
But this is Andrew Tate. But I actually think I can play this clip because it's not music. I think he makes a really good point. I won't play the whole 3 minutes, but let me start it.
Money is the driving force behind all politics. It always will be because it is your primary objective to not only make people believe they can be rich, but to keep your rich people happy, to keep your oligarchy happy, and to keep them politically invested in you. So you talk about the Epstein list. I would argue it's a very similar scenario. It's all about money. It's all about who has the money and controlling the money. Is America as a country prepared to upset all of its richest people? I don't know. Is it? Is it prepared to upset all of its richest people to appease bloodthirsty brokies who don't even care about justice? They just want the drama. Another question, because I would argue that the murders that happen every day on the street are very interesting, but no one cares about that. MS-13 and all this shit, no one really cares about that. But this Epstein list they really care about. They want justice, sure, but it's a drama. It's interesting. They want to find out. They're curious. And I'm asking you, as a professional, you're in charge of a country. Your primary objective is to keep your oligarchy happy, to keep the wealth inside of your nation, and to make them obey you when it comes to sanctions and such other things, and to ensure that the US dollar becomes and stays the predominant currency globally. There's a bunch of bloodthirsty brokies on the internet who barely pay taxes who want to go through a list. Who are you going to prioritize? Who do you care about?
That's what I mean.
I'm not saying it's fair. But anyone who believes the legal systems are fair is a dumbass anyway, because the legal system's never been fair. There's always been a who are you involved in all legal cases. So when you talk about the Epstein things, I sit and think it's all money orientated.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was a really good clip. I don't always side with Andrew Tate.
See, that's a problem because I think Andrew Tate is incredibly disgusting in many ways, and he has in fact gotten away, in my personal opinion, with some things just again through there wasn't the smoking gun. They managed to create enough doubt and nuance. And oh well, was it consensual? Was it not? Da da da. I mean, they've done a lot of really disgusting stuff, and I can say they've done disgusting stuff. It hasn't been found to be criminal at this point in time, but it's certainly, in my opinion, disgusting. So I don't like it when someone like him comes out and actually makes a really good point. But yeah, I mean, that was well said.
Your Andrew Tates, I put him in the same category as Candace Owens. Like, they are, like, you can say you don't like him and he's disgusting. He's clearly intelligent. The guy is a billionaire.
Yeah.
So anyone that's able to, to use his words, escape the matrix and become a self-made billionaire.
He's allegedly a billionaire. I don't think he has nearly as much wealth as he makes out, but he's clearly done very well.
He's definitely got more money than me.
Well. Yeah, he's got more money than me. There's no doubt about that.
I'm very interested in these people because, you and I have tried lots of different things. And I think when it comes to business, there's an element of talent and in hard work, but there's also an element of luck and cutting into the market at the right time. There's lots of different variants.
Being a shameless self-promoter does help.
It really does.
I wish it didn't because I'm not wired that way.
And I've sort of really come to this conclusion in recent weeks, particularly with this whole Tattle Life stuff. You have to be prepared to be hated, and you need to make peace with it.
And you're still one step shy of the mark. You have to recognize that being hated isn't just a part of it; it is a good part of it. It is a beneficial part of it.
And that, for me, that's always been. Like, if I go too hard and then get the hate, I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I must have gone too far. No.
You go
Get
further.
Get in there, correct.
And that's sort of something I've settled on. I'm like, I keep saying I'm in my billionaire era.
Which is why people like Andrew Tate don't give a rat's ass about the fact that I think he's a slimy piece of work.
And that's why he's got money.
Correct.
Because other people are just like, I want to be him.
Yep.
I want that money.
Yep.
And I get it now. And G and I had this discussion last night.
Even if everyone hates him, if he's getting eyeballs, he makes money. It's that simple. He doesn't have to have a single person that likes him.
But at the end of the day, and this is the caveat, and I see this with a lot of successful people, he doesn't need to concern himself with your opinion.
No,
you are never going to be in the same room with him. So I say this
but even if I was, he wouldn't care. This is my point. It genuinely doesn't matter.
Yeah, because this is the thing. He's got the kind of money that he doesn't need to be around the smellies.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of the mindset I've adopted when it comes to my online haters and anyone critiquing me and all those hate forums. And it's just not just me. Anyone who has a public profile has hate forums about them. It's like these people will always exist.
Correct.
They will continue to exist. And the thing is, you live in two very different worlds, and you need to embrace that.
And they're not just it's not that they're a necessary evil. They're a necessary good.
Yeah.
They are a necessary good towards your success.
And it's interesting. So, like, I look at an Andrew Tate and look, there's a lot of things I don't agree with. Like, but having said that, there's some, like, with everyone, you don't necessarily need to like the person to understand that sometimes they say the right thing.
He is a classic case, and I've said before, I would put Russell Brand in the same category, although Russell Brand is a lot better now. But even 15 years ago, Russell Brand was the same as Andrew Tate in this sense. They correctly diagnose the problem, and then they prescribe exactly the wrong solution.
Yeah.
So, for example, Andrew Tate says there is a war on masculinity, and we're trying to emasculate men. He's absolutely right. The prescription that he prescribes to fix that problem is egocentrism, money-driven, performance and pride, and that is completely the wrong answer to the war on masculinity. So he correctly identifies the problem, prescribes the wrong solution. Now, I think he's going to go on a journey a lot like what Russell Brand has been on, where I would say that a lot of the time Russell Brand's solutions now are actually pretty close to the mark.
Yeah.
Like he's become more of a libertarian. He's no longer a Marxist. And I think Andrew Tate, as he matures and grows up a little bit.
How old is Andrew Tate? He's in his 30s?
Yeah, he's younger than us.
Is he? Yeah,
I don't actually know off the top of my head.
Is he older or younger than Tristan?
Tristan's his younger brother, I'm pretty sure.
I actually, to be fair, I don't consume a lot of their content, but something about Tristan seems a little more appealing.
Tristan, I think, hasn't bought into that level of ego that Andrew has.
Maybe he's a little bit more reserved.
Possibly. I mean, Andrew has to be one of the most out there people. I mean, putting up videos of yourself bragging about bitches and Bugattis while smoking cigars shirtless.
Let's be honest, you'd do it if you could.
That's a particular kind of mindset.
Yeah.
No comment. But that's a particular kind of mind.
Rage bait bloody works.
Oh, correct. And Candace Owens has built a career off it. He's built a career off it. Purple Pingers has benefited just as much from the people screaming at him as he has from the people supporting him. Friendly Geordies, all of I have to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I'm less controversial. I'm not out there. People say, oh, you're just in it for the clicks. Actually, I'm not. I would have been a lot more successful if I had just been in it for the clicks. But But nevertheless, I benefit every time someone gets mad at me online.
Yeah.
Like that's just, it's a
I
beneficial
really need
part
to
of it.
adopt this mindset.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
something that I think has held me back for a long time.
The step that I haven't taken, and I don't think it's a good one, so at this point in time, I don't plan to take it, but the step that the Andrew Tates and the Candace Owens and everyone else, they go one step further than where I am. So where you were before was the step of the haters are a necessary part of it. Okay, that's one step. The next step is the haters are a good part of it.
Yeah.
The next step is, therefore, I should go out of my way to make more of them.
Yeah, okay.
And that's the Candace Owens,
Yeah,
Andrew Tate.
yeah.
That's what these guys do. They as part of their calculus, when they're thinking about a story and they're thinking about the angle and the headline and what they're going to say, part of their calculus is how do I get people fired up
Push it
and
further.
angry at me?
Yeah.
Because it's a good thing.
What I find interesting, do you know who Dan Bilzerian is?
I know the name, yeah.
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 Dan Bilzerian, same kind of thing as Tate. Yet
Broadly, yes.
I would say Tate's far more successful than Dan Bilzerian is, because a lot of Dan Bilzerian was built on smoke and mirrors. Like a lot of those models were paid for and hired.
Yeah,
he didn't
yeah,
actually own
yeah.
the house.
But a lot of that's true of Andrew Tate. He did a whole thing in a castle that he rented. It was an Airbnb castle, effectively. Like he's done a lot of the smoke and mirrors as well.
Yeah.
How much of these casinos that he allegedly owned did he really actually own, etc. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
He tells a lot of stories about stuff that can't be verified, and okay, that's fine. But some of the claims that he's made are demonstrably untrue.
Okay.
And so you kind of go, well, hang on, how much of it really is true then?
Well, it's the same with everyone on social media.
Correct. So
And it's not necessarily lying, it's lying by omission.
Well, Andrew Tate has correctly said that he's an entertainer. He is living a persona that he has created. It is an act that he has created because people love it or they hate it.
Yeah.
And either way, he makes money off it. And if you take it from the point of view of he is a real life actor who is playing out a role in real life. He's a method actor playing out a role. Then you can kind of say, oh, well, I can see how he rationalizes that.
Yeah.
But most of it is not real. Most of it is not true. Clearly, he's done well. I'm not saying he hasn't. He's made money. But most of his claims to what he's done, to what he has, to what he owns, a very significant number of those claims have been proven beyond doubt to be false.
The other thing is too, and we talked about this sort of on Monday, a lot of this wealth is fake. It's not even real.
Yeah.
It's real on paper. It's not. No one owns anything. And I know this from, I was setting up a studio for a businessman.
Yeah.
And we were working on it together, and I did all the work.
Yep.
This person funded the initial money. And I knew, from the outside, this person painted like how wealthy they were. And this person's a very questionable individual. And to be fair, I should have done my due diligence. But, it is what it is. And so I went and poured my heart into setting up this studio. I built it with my own fucking 2 hands.
Yeah.
And I was excited to see it work. I built the business model and all that sort of stuff. And then behind the scenes, the person who was putting up the capital, every single thing was over leveraged.
Yeah.
So in trying to accrue wealth, like that thing had bought that thing, had bought that thing, had
It's
bought
a house
that
of
thing.
cards. Yeah.
And so he made a comment to me at one point, and I sort of went, "Oh my God, you're actually an idiot."
Yeah.
And he clearly has more money than I do, but I was like, you actually have absolutely zero business acumen.
And this is the thing, the Andrew Tates of this world, they want you to believe that they've got this vast amount of money that is disposable, that is instant, that it's right there and they can do whatever they want with it.
They can print it.
Actually, any intelligent person that has money, that wealth is working for them, which tends to mean that it's somewhat tied up. It's not instant.
Yeah.
You can't. It's going to be a matter of months or in some cases years. If you make the decision, I want that in liquid form, you have to liquidate that, and depending on where that money is, that can be quite a long process. And so this entire story that Andrew Tate is trying to tell, I mean, the only person who can actually afford to live like that would be a genuine billionaire.
Yeah.
Right? Who can afford to splash millions. You have to be a billionaire before you can actually genuinely afford to have that liquid and not be destroying yourself. And so in his case, I mean, it's a lot of it's rented. He didn't buy a castle for millions. He rented a castle that's worth millions for a few tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Now, that's a lot more money than I'm willing to spend on an Airbnb for a week. Sure, I'm not saying he hasn't got money, but he's leveraging a relatively modest amount of money to create the appearance of a billionaire lifestyle.
Yeah, and then in a weird way makes money by doing that.
Correct,
yeah.
and that's what actually then funds. It's the perverse version of Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast makes his money on videos and then spends all that money on the next video, which is why the video is really successful, which is why he then makes money, which he can then spend on the next video.
Yeah.
Essentially, Andrew Tate is the incels version of Mr. Beast.
I've realised I'm just a little too pure-hearted
Correct. Yeah.
I'm not like, I've always wanted to be successful and I want to build wealth, but I think at the end of the day, and I know this is what screwed up my clothing company. My values get in the way of me making choices.
You wouldn't do scrunch bums.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't do scrunch bums.
That's literally it. There was a few things that I wouldn't do. And I also, like, the second, and I've realized this is a pattern in my own life, to be honest. The second I realize someone has betrayed me or has been disloyal or has done something that is questionable to my values, there is no second chance. I am just like brutal cut.
Yeah.
And I know that cut is what creates the hater.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people who are my haters are people who I've cut out of my life because it's very unceremonious.
Yeah.
As soon as that comes down, like, you know,
and in other news, this will be our last episode of the Oddcast.
No, but what I'm saying here is that there are different ways I could handle things that would mean there's less mess.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't have these tattle haters had I managed things differently.
But that values decision about how cynical am I willing to get is essentially what we were talking about before with haters. Am I willing to be so cynical that I now include making my haters angry into the writing and planning of my videos?
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that the people who are way more successful than me.
Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, like that polarity is actually what makes people love or hate you. The worst thing for your business is to be indifferent.
Yeah, it's to be lukewarm.
Yeah. I definitely recognize that. And there's things that you learn as you go as well. And I know that there's definitely decisions that other people who started when I started are now still successful. And I know why, because they stepped on a lot of people to get there and I wouldn't and couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, well, fuck, it worked for them. And I get it. Like, I'll give you an example. I won't say who it is, but there's a company that started the same time as I did. And they ended up becoming an online store. And so they made a few things themselves, but they were basically a department store online.
Yeah.
And then what they ended up doing is like, because CrossFit at the time was such a new industry and there's all these little startups and it was great. It was cute.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, oh, I'm going to try this and I'm going to do this. And I was always really excited when I saw other people doing stuff.
Sure.
Because there was so much opportunity and a lot of people looked at me as like, oh, well, you're the big company, so you're the big mean ones. And I'd go up and have a chat to them. They'd be like, oh, you're really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like I'm actually not as big as you think.
Yeah.
I'm still a very small fish. I've just been around a bit longer. Anyway, and what this big these guys did is they started taking on these small brands, let's say brand A, that did scrunch bum leggings. And then they took that product, they sent it over to China and they said, make this and sell it back to us.
Yeah.
And then they go, see you later, little brand. We now make this.
Yeah.
And they did that to so many businesses. And then they started getting bigger. And then they're like, hey, we like your cute little business. We're going to buy it off you. And the person's like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
They go, I'm going to buy your business for 50 grand.
Yeah.
Shoomp. Not knowing that they can make so much more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they just absorbed. And I mean, they're doing well.
Yeah, but I mean, that is a business model in itself, starting a business for the purpose of getting bought out by a competitor. There are people that start fast food chains for the purpose of getting bought out by McDonald's.
Yeah.
Not for McDonald's to run them, for McDonald's to shut them down.
Yeah.
It's worth enough to McDonald's to just go, you know what, you've got 3 locations open, we can see where this is going, and you are in our market space. The people that eat McDonald's are being poached by you. Our market research shows that. We're going to pay you $25 million F
you
off.
later.
We're never going to see you again.
Yeah.
You know? And literally just buying off the owners.
I don't think that's what was happening in this case, but yes, I understand.
But you know, I mean, if someone sells their business for $50,000, it's because they saw that as a good deal.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's, and that's the thing. So it's like, I can sit there and go, oh, I wouldn't do that. But at the same time, I'm like, well, that's smart business. And maybe that's my problem.
See, something like that I would do because it's voluntary. If I say to you, and I wouldn't do it with deception. What they might do is say, oh, look, we love what you're doing. We think it's amazing. We're going to continue it in these ways. We'll buy the business and then we'll carry it on. And then they buy it and shut it down. That's deception, in my opinion. That's, you've lied
a lot
to
of what they did is like, they didn't necessarily acquire a lot of businesses. They've definitely acquired quite a few, but what they did was rip people off. And I can prove this. Like, happened to me. They literally took my stuff and they found my supplier.
Yeah.
And they're like, we want you to stop working with her. Make for us.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, make for us, I've got no problem with. Find a supplier and say, hey, make it for us. I've got no problem with.
Yeah.
Trying to then use your market power to say you're not allowed to work with that person, that's pretty dirty.
Dodgy.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, I'm no longer operating and they are. So you know, who's the better business person?
And yeah, this is one of the realities. We live in a big boy world, and there is rough and tumble out there.
Yeah.
And this is this contest.
Business is a battlefield.
Well, yeah, and this contest between your principles and the practical reality of the situation you're facing is relentless. It never stops. It changes form, but you'll be faced with that question all the way through life, no matter what you do. Even if you're just an employee and you never run a business, you're still going to come up against these questions of principles versus pragmatism. Do you tell the boss what you saw that coworker do or not?
Yeah.
There's going to be blowback. There's going to be issues.
Yeah.
You're going to face that all the way through. And it's one of the trickiest things that we balance in life. And I think when it comes to my own work, I have erred on the side of principle pretty much relentlessly.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons why 16 years in, I'm still only building and I'm at a relatively small
I got
size.
the best advice from a lawyer
Right.
a long time ago. And he said, Carly, lawyers make their money on principle because people get so indignant and go, no, I'm
It's the
standing
principle
up.
of the
It's the
thing.
principle.
Yeah.
And that's how lawyers make their money. And ever
That's
since
very true.
he told me that in 2015 against my ex-business partner. And because I was like, no, this is wrong. It's wrong. He's like,
Yep. But
how much money do you want to waste?
Yep.
Because we can keep going.
Yep.
I ended up coming out on top there, but it was a really tough lesson to learn. I would have been 26, 27, I think. I can't remember. But yeah, what a lesson to learn.
20 minutes to wind up the podcast.
All right. There is a discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago, and it is now in the news.
Giggle versus tickle.
It is going back, and she
Yes.
is challenging the verdict. And I think this is on the back of what happened in Britain.
In the UK, for those that don't know, the highest court in the United Kingdom ruled that for the purposes of their anti-discrimination legislation, a woman is defined as someone who is biologically female, i.e. was born as a woman. And that flies in the face of a federal court decision, which is not our highest court. It was a federal court decision here in Australia that said that anyone who identified as a woman, a transgender woman, was a woman for the purposes of the Giggle versus Tickle court case. And now that's being appealed to which court? Do they say which court it's being appealed up to?
Let's have a look.
Because honestly, this is going to end up in the High Court. It is whichever way it just needs to go straight there and just get sorted out. Because if it's not there yet, it will get appealed up to there.
So the finding by Judge Robert Bromwich that sex is changeable and non-binary.
That was the federal court decision.
That was that.
That's what they're appealing.
Will be full court of the federal court. So it says Miss Grover's...
Full bench of the federal court.
Miss Grover's appeal will be heard over 4 days in August in the full court of the federal court before Justices Melissa Perry, Jeffrey Kennett and Wendy Abram.
Yeah. So I don't believe that's the High Court then.
So if it fails there, can she then take it to the High Court?
This is no matter who wins this. This is just round 2 out of what's going to be 3 rounds because no matter who wins.
How is she financing this?
I believe that she's crowdfunded it.
Yeah. Okay.
And she has some support because this is a pretty
For those who
important issue.
don't know, these kind of lawsuits cost millions.
Oh, millions, yeah. And they drag on and they drag on. And if you're up against someone and you don't have deep pockets and they know you don't have deep pockets, they will use, there's an endless array of strategies to delay, to draw it out, to increase your costs.
To send you broke, basically.
To make you run out of money before you even get to a decision. So it's super important whenever someone's running a case like this, not only that they have money, but that their opponents know that they have money and know that it's effectively a bottomless pit.
Yeah.
Because if they know that there's a bottomless pit of money available to that person, then they won't even try those games.
Yeah. Interestingly, we talked about Lily Tino on this podcast.
Yeah.
I find I do believe in trans people, for sure. I have no issue. I've said that on the podcast. I think there are definitely people who, I don't know, like biologically some wires get crossed and they're in the wrong body. Sure, totally understand that. But this new wave, like look at this dude. I'm sorry, this is my opinion. This is not fact. And I look at this and go, this is a man who I would be terrified if he was in a women's change room with me. I'm sorry. As a woman, my defenses are up.
Yeah.
That is not someone who is trying to blend in. That is not someone who's trying to be a woman. I look at other trans people like from yesteryear, like from 15, 20 years ago. They weren't trying to get attention. They weren't trying to get into women's spaces. They were truly just wanting to be accepted for who they are and to live their life.
And they were putting an effort to not be noticed, to pass off as
no worries.
Yeah.
And I'm so fine with that. But this shit and this Lily Tino shit, and rightfully so, these people being called out. I know nothing about Roxanne Tickle, but my instinct as a woman, that looks like someone I don't want to be alone with. I'm sorry.
And when you have the unfortunate reality that there are many women who have suffered abuse in their childhoods or even in their adulthoods, to go into what should be a safe space and to have the thought of things that have happened to them previously, and to feel that presence in that space. It's such an awful position to put victims of abuse into. And I mean, this is really what it comes down to. Women's spaces should be available to women, and should feel like, to the women that are in there, should feel like there are just women in here.
But I feel like there's a conversation that this ties into the pedophilia thing that we had earlier. I'm not at all saying that Roxanne Tickle is a pedophile. That's not my point. What I'm saying is there's a real discussion that we can't have because we have to tiptoe around trans issues or LGBT issues.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have seen far too many cases come forward in recent years. There was the gay couple in America that adopted 2 children and heinously abused those children.
And sold photographs and videos and all kinds of things.
And used to have parties and stuff, and they're now in jail. Now, the issue is, and I'm not saying all are, because this is not an all or nothing kind of discussion. We need to take away all of this threatening of discrimination and bigotry away, because we can't have the real conversation. This man that was convicted of is up for trial around pedophilia in the childcare clinics. What do we know about him? What kind of person was he? Was he someone that was LGBT? I don't know. I haven't heard that come out. But I dare say that there are probably some warning signs there that make you go, okay, cool. You said before that trans men are 5 times more likely.
That's the data out of the US based on who has been convicted and imprisoned versus their representation as a proportion of the population.
Right. So, okay, so if that's the data, that means that, okay, there's nothing wrong with trans people, but when one presents to a situation like working in a childcare centre or something, there definitely needs to be protocol. And sure, maybe it doesn't seem fair, but unfortunately the data isn't fair, and this reflects that we need to take this a little bit more seriously.
One of the really interesting things in our quest to get rid of all discrimination used to be a positive word. We would say that someone had a discriminating palate if they were capable of tasting things and so forth, or they had a taste for the finer things in life. Discrimination, to observe that one thing is better than another, is itself not actually an evil concept. Discriminating and treating some people as less than on the basis of physical attributes they had no control over, skin color, gender, etc., that's wrong. I'm wholeheartedly on board with that. But the idea that we're not allowed to notice is taking it way, way, way too far. Now, me personally, if I was getting a babysitter, it would not be a male.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry if you're on the webs on the pages for babysitters in your local area and you're a male, you're not getting a look in. I am discriminating against men in the babysitting space when it comes to my kids. 100% I am. Now my kids aren't in childcare. If they were, the preschool that my daughter goes to has all female staff. Right? Am I discriminating? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's your prerogative as well.
Absolutely. I'm the father of these children. I'm accountable. I'm responsible. And I'm not going to put them in a position where there's that little alarm bell in the back of my head. My son does do some group activities, but I've gone to the locations where he does those activities and I've observed all of their facilities, and I've satisfied myself that there are no opportunities within the way they're set up and the facilities and the rooms they have and all the rest of it, that there aren't opportunities there for predators. And if there were, we would find a different thing for him to do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that's the world we live in.
And it only takes one incident to really make its mark on a kid. This is totally unrelated, but I'll tell you a little story because I've never forgotten a bit. And I'm 39. So I used to do ballet and I went to dancing 3-4 times a week and I loved it. And I loved it until I was about 9 years old, 8 or 9, I think. And I went to like a summer camp or like summer training kind of thing. Yeah. And we had some fancy snooty-faluty like French ballet teacher who was a man who came in, and the only thing he was missing was the cigarette. And he took one look at me and just looked at me with utter disgust. And he said to me, "You look like you've swallowed a watermelon."
Wow.
I was an 8-year-old kid in a fucking leotard.
Yeah, wow.
And that's what he said. "You look like you've swallowed a watermelon." Now, I wasn't a skinny or a fat kid. I was just literally.
You're just a kid.
I was just a kid.
But ballet is sort of the preserve of exceptionally skinny girls.
And I was of most of the children, like I guess you'd say the chunkier one. Yeah. I wasn't fat by any stretch, by the way. I was just the chunkier one.
But amongst the girls that do ballet.
Yeah. And my best friend, who was a neighbour, we used to call her Skeleton because she was just one of those pencil thin kids. Yeah. And so from that day on, I have had this complex about my body, and it's never left me.
Yeah, right.
And I've made peace with it. But what my point of telling this story is those moments in a child's life can drastically change everything about how they build self-esteem, the way they see themselves. Yeah. And like, I'm a big girl now, I can see past it. But, you know.
Sorry, did you intend that pun?
Yeah. Thank God for Ozempic. But like, you know, I look at this and I go, these abuse situations, right? Like, they ruin people's lives. And it's not just about like, oh, I'm so sorry, here's some money to compensate for you. It's like, it should never have happened. I mean, all these Pakistani rape gangs in the UK, oh, it's terrible, it shouldn't have been covered up. It should never have been a possibility. And we need to look at how we stop it. And if that conversation is hindered because we've got to be careful of people's feelings like Roxy Tickle and stuff like that, I'm sorry, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. I would argue that this Tickle versus Giggle, what's happening with Epstein and his list. You know, if there's no list, then what exactly is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison for
20 years?
And what about her 97-page little black book that apparently had over the names and contact details of over 2,000 people in it? Not that every single one of them is going to be a client, but there's a list. Like there's you know,
there's people that we could start looking into.
Those issues plus this pedophile in Melbourne in the childcare centres, plus the grooming gangs in the UK, all of those are different expressions of the same issue.
Yep.
And that is that for years now we have not been allowed to tell the truth about what's staring us in the face.
Yep.
And we have not been allowed to notice the differences in behaviour. I mean, okay, fine, you don't want me to notice skin colour. No problem, that's fine. But I'm allowed to notice the differences in behaviour.
Yeah.
And I'm allowed to notice that some people tend to be more one way and other people tend to be more another way. That is an observation. That's not prejudice. That is an observation.
Yeah.
And we need to be allowed to observe and allowed to actually have these conversations again.
I'm actually listening to 1984 again, the George Orwell book. And I read it years and years ago, but in my quest to try and get away from just being inundated by stuff, I'm listening to a lot of audiobooks. I wish I had the time to sit there and manually turn pages. Unfortunately, I don't. So I do it, you know, I'm doing the washing or walking the dog, whatever. And they were talking about rewriting history. You know, that chapter where they're talking about, you know, the lead character, his job is to rewrite the documents.
Yes.
And he was talking about how things now can exist because they were written into history and all context of it. And that's kind of what
there's no history. There's just an ever-changing present in which the party is always right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so even if Big Brother got it wrong, it was rewritten so that he foresaw things unfolding.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like that's what woke was. And again, I use it as a collective term. What I'm saying is there was an era there where you saw things with your own eyes and you were gaslit to believe the opposite. You know, that all trans people just want to be accepted. Love is love, you know, equal rights and all this sort of stuff. And then all this stuff comes out and you go, but hang on a minute, the thing that we warned you about is happening and you're telling us it's not happening.
Well, let's use an absolutely concrete example that can't be disputed, and that is that the Food and Drug Administration in the US has just come out and updated the warning label on the mRNA jabs, particularly concerning young men between 12 and 24 and their heart conditions. And this is
That's a conspiracy.
I know. Crazy conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers are at it again. Well, turns out they were right again, and now we literally have the data to prove it. And it's concerning enough that that they've had to update the warnings.
Okay, so I went deep into this and I actually got pretty upset going back into this because it's still a really tough time for me to make peace with the whole COVID era. And I was going through my old screenshots. I was going through all the articles and Facebook posts around this, trying to what I wanted to do for the podcast was to pull up the conversation of people on, say, Facebook or something about, it's bullshit, it's just conspiracy theories, and here it is later. And I actually got really, like, it sent me down the wrong way of thinking. And what I realized is, like, I still haven't made peace with just how much we were vilified in that era. And it's very evident that it's still a problem for me. But you might remember, I've told this story before, but you might remember I said to you the day my business partner made that video about me, he then got 20,000 or so new followers on Instagram.
Right.
And his first post with his new following was a photo of his arm with the Band-Aid saying that I've had the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yeah.
And he did it with a song from Jay-Z.
Right.
And I found that screenshot and then I found all the other screenshots and I was like, whoa, shouldn't have gone here, bad. And I just remember thinking, like, that scenario where I was counteracting the narrative and then I got taken down so spectacularly. And then the person who did it from a nefarious mean then put up the post doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And
Look at my.
And he did it as the ultimate virtue single. And if you can believe it, I've screenshot it. The person who commented on that post was none other than Miss Clementine Ford.
Oh, really?
And she wrote the best flex because he's like literally doing the whatever. Ugh. And then here we are.
Yep.
What are we? 2025. And this article, by the way, is Wednesday, the 3rd of June, 2021, where they just started talking about possible links. It wasn't confirmed.
Yep.
And all of these people, your Clem Fords, all these people that just vilified us for being vaccine hesitant have been proven right.
Am I allowed to talk about Shane Warne again yet? Or is that still too soon? You know, like the evidence has been staring us in the face for years and we weren't allowed to
It's just because he
notice.
smoked cigarettes.
Yeah.
Just on that, G's grandmother is about to turn 100.
Oh, wow.
Bless her cotton socks. And she's 100, so she has a couple of health concerns.
She's got threadbare cotton socks, but she's, bless them anyway. Yeah.
But she's still very with it.
Yeah.
She's got typical things that people who get to that age sort of struggle with. But for the most part, like brain-wise, she's great. She doesn't have any signs of dementia, nothing. She is whip smart. And G was saying to me that she used to be a prolific smoker.
Yeah, right.
Like chain smoker.
Yeah.
And last time we were up there, I was like, come on, give me the baby photos. I need to see them. Bring them out. And so, sorry, G.
2 years old, cigarette in the mouth.
I actually need to show you this photo. I'll pull it up as I'm talking. I went through G's photo album and just took a whole bunch of photos.
It's been a day for photos, hasn't it?
He's like, why have you got those? I'm like, mwah. But G, when he was younger, he had the Devon Saw haircut. The guy from Ghost? Not Ghost, Casper, the young heartthrob. Anyway, I'll pull it up.
I can picture Casper the Ghost.
The haircut where the floppy side.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll pull it up. And we were going through this, and then sure enough, there's his grandmother just always with a bloody ciggy in her hand, bless her. And she's fine.
That's hilarious.
And I'm not saying that smoking doesn't kill. What I'm saying is there's exceptions. And so, the conversation around Shane Warne was that, he had a heart attack because he was a prolific smoker and drinker. I'm like,
And maybe.
it wasn't the vaccine.
Heart attacks already existed before the mRNA jabs. Oh, yeah. Yeah, nice.
Don't you reckon?
Yeah.
Devon Saw?
Yeah, nice jaw on him too.
Yeah. Gee.
For that age, yeah.
You little cutie with his little earring.
So we're allowed to talk about things like smoking kills.
Yeah.
But we're not allowed to notice that, and just the news the other week, there's 10 new previously rare types of cancer that Australia is now leading the world in.
Yeah.
Right. Researchers are trying to figure out what the cause could be. I think I know where we should at least begin the research. I think we could. There's a candidate that we should investigate and rule out first.
Can you ever think of a time where there was a prescription drug that was pushed onto people and told that it was amazing, and then it resulted in absolutely demonstrative, terrible things to people?
No, it's never happened before. Drug companies have a perfect track record, and never once have they ever peddled something as being safe and effective that turned out to be incredibly destructive and deadly.
For those who are
never
listening,
in history.
For those who are listening, I've just put thalidomide up here on the screen.
Yeah.
This is a well-known case, but
I worked with a guy who was a thalidomide baby for a couple of years when I was working with Channel 31 community TV down in Melbourne.
What was its original? Like, what was the middle? The middle. You made me do it.
Thalidomide.
What was it prescribed for?
Are you ready to be really angry?
Yeah.
Morning sickness.
Right.
Oh, you're pregnant? Have this.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fuck me.
Yeah. So this guy, he had arms that came directly out of his shoulders.
Yeah.
So he had, wrists. We all have arms that come out of our shoulders. He had wrists that came directly out of his shoulders.
Yeah.
He'd made a go of it. He had a motorized wheelchair that got him around. But he was up there. He was doing stuff. It's amazing when people have no choice. It's amazing the ways of living that they find and facilitate a perfectly respectable and dignified life. But yeah, he was someone who would spend the whole of his life with no arms because his mum trusted a doctor who said, "Here, this will help you with the morning sickness."
Oh, it makes me so angry.
It should.
This was in the 60s?
Oh, goodness. I'm not going to try and guess the decade.
Just judging by the photos.
No, it's more recent than you think.
Hang on.
It's more recent than you think. If you really want to get
50s
angry.
and 60s, it was prescribed as a sedative and treatment for morning sickness.
Yeah.
So a lot of these kids would have been born like late 60s, 70s. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the thing that pisses me off about this is that not only were we gaslit, we were held as hostages until we took it. And then sorry, I'm going to get really mad. I got to like, and then to be told you were never forced.
Yeah, it was never mandatory.
It was never forced. You had a choice.
That's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they're saying by that is like you could have taken the option to lose your job, be excluded from society. That was a choice, but you weren't brave enough to make it.
But many people did make that choice, and they're still paying the price financially. I mean, you take a hit like that in the wrong years of your life, and you may never actually get all the way back to where you would otherwise have been.
I have to be really careful talking about the vaccine because when that all went down, there was so much pressure on me. They're like, because I was only ever talking about small business.
Yeah.
And they're like, is she an anti-vaxxer? And, you know, that was just alleged. And so I have to be careful with what happened next. And I don't know when I can ever talk about it, but I have to be careful. And I'm angry about it.
Yep, and you should be. You know, I know people that got faked paperwork. I know people that I know of doctors who would tip them down the sink and tick them off. I know of people who fabricated the tick, took screenshots and did other things. Some people got very clever and cloned the app so that it actually looked like it functioned properly. There was a lot of
This is all allegedly, by the way. We don't know anyone that actually did
this.
this.
No, of course not. And then there are other people that unfortunately were compelled and didn't find an alternative, and they took it. Most of them are fine. I know of one who isn't, who really at the time didn't want to take it, and he's not okay. And I know a number of people who lined up for it, took it willingly, and I've told the story of one before. He's suffered a brain injury, will probably never work again. And I bumped into him before one of the protests. He'd gone to the exhibition building to get his jab back when they were giving you the free ice creams. And I showed up there to speak on the stage at one of the protests. This is after the police stopped kicking the shit out of us. And so it was all legal and accepted, and there was a truck there waiting. And I got there early before the march arrived in order to prepare and be ready for when I had to talk. And all of a sudden I see this friend of mine walking towards me, and he's got this incredibly smug look on his face, and he's licking this ice cream. And clearly he was trying to make a point, and I didn't understand what it was initially. And then I went, oh, he's saying I've just had, and at that point it was booster territory. That was his third.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Well, all of a sudden, fast forward a couple of years, his wife finds him face down on the ground. He's had some kind of a neurological brain issue, and he'll never work again. I don't believe he can drive, etc. I think he's permanently damaged now. And do you think they're even willing to consider the possibility that there might be some relationship? No.
I'm just going to bring this one up.
Yeah.
Remember her during COVID?
Yep. Now, again, these things existed before, right? These things did happen before. We can't say that every single one is linked. But when the experts are coming out saying there are 10 previously rare forms of cancer that are now suddenly everywhere in Australia and we don't know why.
Rare.
Well,
very rare.
Yeah. At some point, we have to be willing to have this. And this, I guess, is the real theme of this podcast has actually been we need to have these conversations. We need to be allowed to talk about these
And
things.
this is what frustrates me because I don't know that to be true. I'm not a doctor. I'm certainly not saying that I know the answer definitively. What I'm saying is we can't even have that conversation.
We can't talk. Yep.
And I dare say in another 5-10 years, that conversation may be another thalidomide.
Thalidomide.
Look what you did.
Yeah.
I was saying it fine.
And the first doctors to blow the whistle on thalidomide were mocked.
Yes.
And they were opposed by the industry. They were making a fortune off this thing.
Yeah.
The same thing again with was it the cervical cancer vaccine for women?
Yep.
Whichever, I don't remember the name of that one.
Starts with
Gardasil.
Yep.
These companies make money off these things, and if you're the first researcher to come out and go, "Hang on, guys, I think there's a signal here, and I think it isn't good," don't expect to get a warm welcome. Don't expect to be celebrated for your work, and in fact, you're probably sacrificing your career. And unfortunately, that's the reality now.
And what about here's another one, the Sackler family, who introduced oxycodone. And said it wasn't addictive. Addictive. And now we have an opiate crisis.
Yeah.
These people have made billions off it. And, never been held accountable. It just makes me so angry.
Yeah.
The more I talk about this stuff, the angrier I get. But
All right. Do we have any other topics to get through in the next minus 1 minute and 20 seconds that we have?
Well, this is actually our officially longest podcast.
Okay. Well, there you go. New record, everybody.
That was kind of everything on the list. I think we've tackled everything. We didn't go deep dive into anything particular, but I feel like it was a good conversation.
I feel like that first hour and a half, actually, before we really even got to the topics, I think we actually had a really, really productive conversation. But my bladder is telling me that the conversation needs to come to an end.
Me too. I'm going to race downstairs.
I regret topping up on the water. That was a mistake.
That's why I've stopped, because I'm literally sitting here going, no sudden movements, and do not pour water near me right now.
Yeah. Well, that was episode 27 of the Oddcast.
And do you know what's interesting? A lot of people are like, oh, it's a political podcast. You've got to get things right. That's not what this is. This is a discussion.
Yeah, it's a discussion. And yes, we do,
we talk about
We talk about things. I've done research on topics. Carly's done research on topics. But we don't know where this is going to go when we start.
Yeah.
We go places that we're like, I had no idea we were going
Didn't
there
know you were bringing that up.
And therefore, yes, we are going back into our memories and trying to recall things. We don't always get every single detail right.
Because I said last week something about, I think it was on the live show, I was talking about the NDIS, and I remember reading the article that it's now suggested that 1/5 of Australians are disabled.
Yeah, 20%, yeah.
Yeah, and I made the comment that 20% on NDIS.
Yeah.
So yes, I do get things wrong. I'm not a journalist, but
well, there was an article saying 20% are disabled, but that doesn't mean all 20% are on the NDIS.
But give them time.
Yeah, give them
if they're
time.
eligible for it.
Listen, this is the thing. You get more of what you incentivize. And people say, but people wouldn't fake being disabled. If you offered $100,000...
People wouldn't fake being Aboriginal.
If you offer $100,000 for a broken bone, there are people who are going to line up to punch each other in the face so they can both cash in on the $100,000 for a broken nose.
Yeah.
Like whatever you incentivize, you will get more of. Now, maybe you would never accept a broken bone for $100,000, but there are other people out there who would. Maybe you would never go through the paperwork and debase yourself by pretending to have a disability that you don't actually have. Maybe that would be completely off the table for you, but there are people for whom it's quite appealing.
Yeah.
Well, you will get more of whatever you incentivize.
Yes. And it's, as we've said now, like talk about gaslighting when it comes to the Indigenous stuff. How many people are faux Aboriginals?
Well,
because we're not even allowed to question.
Well, Andrew Bolt got dragged through court for simply making the point that if we are going to have special anything for Aboriginal people, we have to have a definition of what is or isn't an Aboriginal person. And that simply bringing up that point got him dragged through court under the Section 13C of the Racial and Religious Discrimination Act. This is going back probably nearly 20 years by now, probably. But he was spot on. And we have that exact problem today. If we're going to do treaties, who are we negotiating with? Who's inside that tent?
Who's got
who's not?
Who's got everything to gain from being involved in that?
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, we should probably wrap it up because I'm literally not in a good way.
At the Oddcast HQ, at Topher Field.
At Carl's J Soda.
Are you going upstairs or downstairs?
I'll go downstairs.
Go.
Okay.
Go.